answering community needs. We are setting some things up because it is a 5-year plan. This year are shepherding the main library through its closure and then into its new library locations. So that is factoring into what we are focusing on. This handout, this is something that we encourage the trustees to use. You can pass around to the community. This encapsulates what our goals are for the next 5 years. Again, we have our mission and vision. We have our community commitments. And then we also have our organizational goals, our operational goals on the back. We have a much more fleshed out internal document where we have loose timings for where each year will have its priorities. Again, this year the main library is taking up a lot of our bandwidth, rightly so. But then through the main library, we're able to answer other things that we have been wanting to focus on. So we can move to the next slide. Our mission and vision, which we recently updated, thank you for that. And again, on our next slide, our core values: community engagement, educational success, literacy, workforce development, and equity. Equity being that we would like to have all of our citizens of Charleston County to have equal access to all these resources. So that is how we frame it. You can go to the next slide. So again, our organizational goals. With Main Library, we have a lot of opportunities to look at how we can optimize. We're going to be hearing about M's, which Haley's going to be talking about later, about Main Library, and that we're going to be able to optimize things we're doing at a system level, which is fantastic. We have been able to connect with the Trident United Way, and that from a community engagement standpoint has been very, very positive. At some point this year, I'm going to have Trident United Way on the agenda for a board meeting where they can talk about the very successful pilot that we have had at the main library with wraparound services, how that pilot is working, and that is part of our organizational goals as part of community engagement. The pilot this year is working so that Trident United Way is currently in our former administration space at the main library, and we are working on what we call the triage. When a person comes into the library and they're looking for services, is it library services or are they looking for something outside of library services? And usually that falls in the scope of Trident United Way. They have been very impactful with their approach, and they have also sent some of their clients over to us for things like workforce development. We have been their connector for computer use, for resumes, for job help, for job coaching. So it's been working very, very well. The overarching goal for that pilot, and that's something, again, that is part of our strategic plan for this year, is continuing to identify services that are currently being tested at Main Library that we can broaden out to other library locations around our system. And so we don't want to just centralize that just at Main Library. For example, having someone that can help someone with rental assistance is wonderful to have at Main Library, but again, there might be someone here at Baxter-Patrick that needs those services. And so we are working on this year, with the next step, how can we broaden those centralized services and how can we share those resources at Main Library out across the system. So that's working fantastic. It is going to take a full year to work through, and when Main Library comes back online after the renovation, they will have their permanent office space for the next 10 years, and then we would have beta tested throughout this year and while we're offline for how those services spread out across the system. But it's working very, very well. Literacy has been fantastic. We are working with certain partnerships with CCSD for early literacy and adult literacy. Those are priorities for this year as well. CCSD has been a fantastic partner in that. Our Every Child Ready to Read protocol has been very popular with parents, and that is for children 0 to 5, where we train our librarians and library staff and children's to make reading fun, how to teach reading to parents to teach their kids. We help parents put together a book list. We help them connect with objectives that they would like for learning for their children, and that has just been, again, very well received by the community. CCSD has said that we were a logical partner in early literacy, and so they are working on protocols, classroom prep. I can't speak too deeply on that because we are still working out the details, but we are excited about that partnership, and we will continue to develop that, and I will continue to report to the board. Adult literacy is something that we are very proud, again, to be tapped by CCSD. We do not teach adults how to read. but we can absolutely connect them with resources, and we can be the hub where people learn how to read. I can say that anecdotally, what we hear from our library team is that yes, adults frequently come into our library and they will say they would like to learn how to read. They're not very confident with reading. They feel safe telling us that. And so we are able to connect them with resources. And so it's been organically happening with CCSD, but the school district actually has a formal program that they are using to help parents and caregivers who reading may not be their strongest skill set. And so we are working on developing that, and again, we have been named as a partner for that. Internally, we are very excited about our library staff. We continue to work on professional development. Again, the success of, for example, with Robert and security, we have a lot of wonderful best practices that we are sharing at a local and state and national level. And so we will continue to prioritize that throughout the year. The Riley Center is going to be presenting some of their findings from the community, and that also is going to direct our approach and our priorities. That might shift our priorities a bit with what we want to do throughout the rest of the year. It's still early. And so I can say I was very, very pleased with what the Riley Center found, which is that we are very much a destination for the community. We are a trusted partner. The community has expectations from us where they would like to see certain services, and so we want to make sure that we are answering that. So the Riley Center will be able to speak to that. This handout is something that we are sharing with our partners, and we will send it out to the board if we haven't already. Please feel free to share that with your partners whenever you are talking about our strategic plan in the community, or if you get questions about it. This really is an encapsulation of the next 5 years. I will continue to update the board with our priorities for this year. Again, Maine right now is emerging as our priority, and then it cascades down with what we are doing in the system. But between Maine Library, with the Trident United Way, with the partnership with CCSD, and with our professional development strategies that we have internally, we have a very robust year. And this is in addition to all the current services that we have. We still have a robust summer reading program. We still have summer feeding, after-school programs, all of our other programs and partnerships that are going very, very well. So, is there one more slide, Amanda? I can't recall. And operational goals. So, I believe that is the last part of it. And so after the Riley Center presentation, we are going, which is now going to be presented to the board at 10 o'clock, we are, as an executive team, going to go back and just make sure that our projects align with what has been articulated from the community, and having the Riley Center conduct a survey has been part of our strategic plan also. So we've been meeting that for community engagement. And so we are on track. It is an ambitious plan for 2030, but we are very excited about the progress that we've had, and it's going to be a fantastic year. And I'm right on time. Very good. All right. Next up on our agenda. Oh, good. This actually gives a little more time with that. Okay. Perfect. So while we're getting ready for that, I'm going to front load some things. Next up, we're going to have a collection development orientation. Haley, which just falls into his channel, will be talking through that. We have a few things on your table. You have the packets up with the discovery packets. Do we have the?
I shared the letters. You have the packet.
Okay, so we just have one copy of the packet though. Okay. So what I have is the discovery packet for the book that was officially challenged. It was officially challenged, and Judge Rawls said he didn't mind us talking about that. So I want to address some of the things that have emerged over the past week. First of all, I needed to be said, and I want to set on record, that unfortunately I have had many staff come to me who have said that they are scared and afraid for coming into work lately because of the way that they've been portrayed in the media and the way that things have been misrepresented in the media as well. Big Hard Sex Criminals was never in the children's area. This was verified by the state library. I can verify as well. This book was always an adult book. It was always cataloged in the adult area. This book was purchased about 10 years ago. This is at the time, a popular book that was requested probably by the community. It has a following. It is actually going to be turned into an Amazon TV show. It is definitely for adults. It was always shelved in the adult area. It was ordered 10 years ago. That is a different time. Because it was popular, because people were checking it out at the time, there were 2 additional volumes. We also ordered those per our standard protocol and policy. I cannot, as executive director, remove a title or consider removing it unless it has been officially challenged. While I know there were concerns in the community, this book was not officially challenged per our policy. Please understand that if we remove a book without having followed the policy, that's a violation of our policy. And there are community groups that would be quite concerned and say that that might be censorship. So I'm glad we were able to follow policy. And if any board member has a concern about an item, they are more than welcome to challenge it. You always have been. We received the challenge on, I believe, the 24th. We moved quickly. Haley's going to talk about the challenge process, but essentially we pulled it together. We all read the book. I have read all 3 volumes. I have read all 3 volumes. The official challenge came for volume 1 after I read volume 2 and 3, and we made the determination that volume 1 was not a good fit for our current collection and not a good fit for our current policies. This is 10 years later. This is a different time. We decided that we were going to pull volume 1 and 2 and 3 because if volume 1 was not a good fit, then it makes sense that volume 2 and 3 also. The digital versions of them were not able to be removed until January 30th because that is through Hoopla. I hope you can understand that working with a vendor can be very challenging. It literally took me as executive director calling our sales rep and saying, we must remove this title immediately. It took a lot of effort. They understood it was urgent, but there were several things on there in IT, and so we had to work on the timeline, unfortunately, but it was only a few days. So the title's gone, as is 2 and 3. We have internal controls, again, that are looking at our graphic novel collection. We welcome feedback from the community. There has been, I'll answer in a minute, calls for example, an audit from certain folks. I will say that we are audited all the time. Our collection is public. We have 200,000 card holders. Our collection is public. Every single book that we have is on our shelves. Our collection is public through our catalog, which is public. I will say that our policies worked. In a bit, we can talk through everything that we have done since I've been director. There have been books that have been challenged that I have aged up. And now there's books that have been challenged that I have completely removed from our collection. The policy does work. We are going to talk about things that we have done curation-wise. For example, the middle grade collection is an example of curating that we know that we needed for our youth collection. That has gone over wonderfully with our public and with our parents. They're very delighted that they have those younger readers in elementary school that are reading at a higher level, but they're not quite ready for teen books. And that has been a best practice around the state. I have other library directors contacting me about how did you create this middle grade collection? And that has been wonderful that we can share that best practice. We are going to be creating a parent caregiver collection. That is going to be in the adult nonfiction section. Haley's going to talk about that in a little bit, and that's going to take a little bit of time to curate because, as I mentioned, we have Main Library that we are working with right now. But this is a wonderful time to look at curation so that we can see what might need a little more parent attention and guardrails and what would be a good fit for the parent caregiver collection. A parent caregiver collection is something that has titles that deal with things like divorce, death, gender ideology, tough topics that parents just might need a little more guidance on and a little more resources. We had a parent caregiver collection at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library where I was at. It's a very common industry standard. There are other libraries in the state that also have that, so we know it's a good fit. And again, that means that we'll be looking at the children's nonfiction and what will be appropriate to age into this particular collection. And then that means that per explicit parental consent with the library cards, that means that if there is a book that has been aged into or put into the adult collection, unless the kids have explicit parental consent through the library card that the parents sign off on, they cannot check out anything in the adult collection. Haley's going to talk about this in a little bit, but I believe at last we had 25,000 and some change youth cards, and I think we had about 180 parents opt in for some kind of restriction. And so what we have heard from the community, from our parents, is that thank you for the option, but that most parents are not opting at this time to restrict their cards. They have the option, they have the opportunity. We absolutely remind parents. We have a plan at the end of the school year, at the beginning of the school year, during summer reading. It is on our banner every time there is a parent getting a new card. And again, if you are under 18, you have to have parental permission. That is policy, and that is also articulated in the state library. I'm pleased to say, here is the letter from the state library that clearly says that we have always been compliant with the proviso. The book in question was in the adult section. It was never in the children's section. And proximity is not violation of the proviso. The state library will be here later, and I'm sure they will be happy to answer any questions. I don't want to speak for them. Yes, Alyssa.
Okay, then apologies to Vic, because this isn't personally about your reconsideration. This is about the policy that you choose to follow because you want to dot your I's and cross your T's, which is
It's board
understandable.
policy, Alyssa. I must follow it.
So I notice on his reconsideration, he does not specify the volume, and he says that he read the entire work between our board meeting and the following morning. I assume he's talking about reading all three works since you pulled all three works. Previously in November, a patron submitted a reconsideration for all three volumes and acknowledged that she did not read the entire set, and that was denied. So how is that different than what Mr. Rawls did?
So the patron said, and I'm glad they were truthful, that they had not read the entirety of the volumes. And per our policy, they have to read the entire work.
So is that true that you were able to read all three volumes between our board meeting that night and the next morning?
It's not War and Peace, Alyssa.
It's also
No, it's not.
It's a graphic novel.
No, I'm aware of it.
Okay, so it's a comic book.
So you don't think he did?
I'm just saying that it's very difficult. Those volumes have been checked out. So I'm not sure how he was
So if
able
you
to do that.
recall, I said that the online volumes were still available. And so
Mhm.
Vic was able to check them out online and to read them
All
online.
three of them are available through Hoopla. I think just
Yes, they were
volume
until
2 were.
volume 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, because in checking them previously, the only one I saw online was volume 2.
I'm afraid that's incorrect because volume 1, 2, and 3 were on there.
Okay.
Believe me, I was talking to Google about all three.
Okay. Well, regardless, it does not specify which volume he's complaining about, and that was one of the objections that was given to the patron who submitted the reconsideration previously.
Yes, ma'am.
So what's the problem? Are you
The
not
problem is that it seems like an after-the-fact CYA move.
happy? What's the difference?
Alyssa, here's what I'm going to say. This was challenged officially by policy. Vic read the volume. Vic reached out to me. Vic gave me the heads up that he was going to challenge this, so I knew it was coming. I had read all three volumes, and so I knew that we needed to have a challenge. I was very happy that Vic did it, and frankly, I wish, had you read it, or had you had the authority at any time to read it and to submit a challenge. Anyone in this room did. Any patron can. I would have deeply appreciated that, so we could have followed policy. I'm very grateful that we were able to. So,
Well, when I brought it to you in September at a board meeting and showed it to you, there was no suggestion, why don't you do reconsideration? You simply told me.
Here's the
that-
reconsideration form, Alyssa.
Yeah, I'm aware of it. I have a
Okay.
copy of it.
Right
This
there.
is not the
That-
argument.
that's all you
What
needed
I'm
to
saying
do.
is that
And
your reaction to me at the September board meeting was simply, some people like this and thank you for your opinion.
I said, no ma'am, no ma'am. I said, thank you for your feedback. I said, this is in the adult section.
Right.
Alyssa, we have to follow policy. And so, may I also say that when a patron comes in and holds a book up and says, I want this removed, we cannot do that. That is violation of policy.
I understand that.
When a board member walks into a room and hands me a book and says, I have a concern about this book, I need you to remove this book, what about this book? I have to follow policy.
Right.
So if I was not clear before, let me be clear now. Yes, please, fill out a form for any volume, anything that you do not like. You have to do it one at a time. But yes, you are more than welcome to.
Well, I wish you had suggested that in September.
I wish you had challenged it, but thank you for that. So it was officially challenged, it was officially removed. I would like to go back to the earlier point that I have made, that library staff are very concerned for their safety. Very concerned for their safety. If you are reading how we are being portrayed in the media, it is misconstruing everything that we have said. The book was removed on the 27th, yet on the 29th, there was media attention. It had already been handled. But now there are elected officials that are putting out on social media that we are hurting children, that we have inappropriate books in the children's area. that librarians are doing bad things. They are saying that. And then there are comments in there that are also echoing that. It is very, very concerning. I've had probably 5 staff members come to me. So if 5 people are saying that to me, I am betting that there are more. Those are the people talking to me. This has been a very difficult week. It is very, very hard to have library staff you care about. I have 378 library staff that I care for. And they have been calling me, not all 375, but the 5, and they are saying that their colleagues are also scared. As stewards of the public library, as trustees, I implore you to please help slow down the rhetoric. Understand that this has been followed by policy. This book was never in the children's section.
But it is accessible. They can walk in and take it off of a shelf.
And that is not a violation of the proviso. And remember, we have explicit parental consent, and browsing is allowed. So there's no violation of the proviso. We defer to the parents. We have 180 parents who have opted into some level of restriction, and most of those are for the younger kids, and most of those do allow a level of adult use. We have over 25,000 kids that are able to come in and check out whatever they want.
So if you have a 15-year-old walking in from Wanda who doesn't even own a library card, and they're coming in because it's an after-school rec area, they've got access to the entire library.
That's true.
Okay, just pointing it out.
Thank you for that. I apologize for my frustration, but again, library staff are scared. Alyssa, you have said that you have close ties to library staff. You said that you're friends with library staff. So you should know that some of those library staff will reach out to you.
I have specific contacts in Edisto, yes ma'am. And they don't have any of that in their collection.
No, they don't. This book actually was only in 3 libraries. And again, it was removed per policy.
Well, going forward, how do we prevent something like that being spotlighted as there's more content out there that is of concern?
First, if you have a concern, I highly recommend you to fill out a reconsideration form. That is the quickest way to do that. And if you have members of the community that have a concern, I also highly recommend them to do so. The process works. The process works. We were able to very quickly read the title. We knew this title, after reviewing it, was not a good fit for our collection, and so we moved quickly. If there are titles, please fill out the form, Alyssa.
So there are 291 titles under the genre of erotic, and I would assume that most of them would fall into a violation of the proviso.
That depends on what is the format. There is a difference between a graphic format with pictures and a literary format. There is nuance there.
Right, and there's 291 titles, and some of them have multiple copies and multiple, some are video, some are whatever. But
I'm sorry, videos?
digital.
So yes, let's be clear. So
Yes.
you're saying that there is a format, a book format, and there's a digital format.
I'm saying that if you pull up your genre under your collection of erotic, there are 291 titles, and some of them have multiple issues, availability.
And so,
Are any of them in the children's section?
No, but they are accessible.
Are any of them in the children's section?
I wouldn't know because I haven't gone through all of them, and I would assume not.
Okay,
I would assume
not as well.
Right.
So I would assume that a parent going through the library with their child would be aware that there are no erotic titles
And what
in
do
the
you
children.
do when the child's not got their parent with them?
if the parent has signed up on a library card
If
and
they don't even have a
comfortable-
card?
Then if they don't have a card, Alyssa, we do not, that is not our purview. The parent is there. The parent is supposed to be managing their child. We are not babysitters.
Well, I think the proviso relates to availability, not whether someone's a card holder. You get somebody from Berkeley County come in.
And so, exactly, we have
That's
to
a
follow
legal
the,
opinion.
that's a, that is supposition.
Okay,
We have to follow the proviso, and that's an excellent question to ask the state library.
okay.
It is true that there might be books that are labeled per publisher erotic, and they are probably romance novels. A very popular one right now is Bridgerton, which I believe is possibly erotic fiction. I'm not sure. So that is a very, very popular genre. I do believe, Haley, that romance novels in their entirety are the 3rd highest circulating genre in the system. So that is adults. That is adults. That is in the adult genre. In the adult collection, all of those books. So anything erotic if it is labeled erotic, would be in the adult section. It's not in the children's section. The reality is that some of our branches also are small. You go to Edisto. It's a small branch, isn't it? It is. So this particular title was found, I believe, at the Dart Library. It was never true that this title was in the children's area.
Agreed.
The adult area is in proximity, is right next to the children's area. And let me be clear, crystal clear, that is something that every single library in the state of South Carolina deals with. That is not indicative just to us. It is very, very true that there are small libraries in our system and around the state. They are large rooms, about the size of this room, okay? So you might have adult shelves over here and the children's shelf right across from it.
I've never said they were in children's.
But it has been said, Alyssa.
Agreed.
Agreed. So that is what distresses me, is that there are falsehoods being spread about our integrity as a library system and the integrity of my staff and the way that we do our job. This book was never in the children's section. Anything that is labeled erotic is adult and not in the children's section. Now, as far as an audit, again, our catalog is public. Every single book that we have is on the shelf is public. We currently go through audits daily because people are coming in, looking at our catalog, looking at our selection, and if they have an issue, they are more than welcome per policy to challenge it, but also they can request books that they want to see. Now, Haley's going to talk about some of the things that we do internally, internal controls. And if you recall, last year, I talked about how I made changes with my exec team and how there were things that were not working as I needed them to, and so I handled it, and now we're in a better place. We have a collection of 2.4 million items. 2.4 million items. Haley's going to give you the exact number. It's 2,400,000 something. There's a slide. So that means that while we do our best to look at everything that is coming in, we have more control of what's coming in. What is currently in our collection, we are reviewing as we're able to, per reading protocols and things like that. But that means that, yes, there are things like this title that probably haven't aged very well, and that we're doing our best to, with our staff, look through things. But honestly, we have a collection that is very, very large, I think one of the largest in the state, and that we are ensuring it to the best of our ability. Again, the proviso allows for that. So the proviso says that it is a good faith signature between the chair and the library director that, to our knowledge, the collection does not have books of period interest in the children's section. Remember, this book was never in the children's section. I have aged up books that were in the children's section that we found did not meet the proviso, and now we put it into the adult section. Yes, Rob?
Just a quick point. The reconsideration point. Every one of your library directors and every librarian in the system is aware that this form exists.
Yes.
And should a patron walk in the front door and ask for a form or ask the question, how do I go about challenging a book? These forms are readily available.
Yes.
They're
absolutely.
also readily available online.
Yes.
Okay. And they're readily available to all of our board members. So if a question comes up about a title that you have concern with, your first step is go online, download a form, read the book, watch the movie, whatever, fill out the form. The first step is not to issue a press release to the general public. The first step is not to reach out to buddies in Columbia and request, here's a letter I'd like you to sign, and submit that false information that books were found in the children's section, which they were not. There's only one source of information for that, because as far as I know, they did not visit the library. So that information was coming to them secondhand. Okay? So the first step is not go to the press. The first step is not how can this advance my political career. The first step is fill out the form. Challenge the book. Vic didn't have a problem challenging a book. It's easy to do. It's the simplest thing in the world to do. So I would invite every board member that should they be contacted by a patron or if they themselves have a question about a title, there is a process that we follow, that we must follow, to see the system work.
And on that, it is 9:35, so I'm going
Let's
to
get
turn
going.
over to Haley.
All right. So for those who don't know, my name is Haley Hall. I am the Deputy Director of Operations, which, among other things, it includes overseeing our collection. I'm personally not a collection development librarian. I just want to make that clear. I don't personally select books, but I do oversee that department. So there's two things that I'm going to talk to you about today. One is the collection development process, just kind of a pretty basic overview because it is a complicated process. The second thing I'm going to talk to you about is the reconsideration process, including the forum and the working groups. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in. Amanda, okay. So first off, let's talk real quick about what collection development is. In its basic form, it is selecting titles for all 18 branches, reviewing those titles that are selected, but it also includes repurchasing titles that are old or grubby or just need to be replaced, or weeding titles that.
Haley, use the microphone. Yes,
I'm
yep.
good?
Can everybody hear Haley okay? Okay, good.
Got it. I'll grab the microphone.
Yes, do it.
Well, grab that one there then. That'll go throughout the whole house.
Okay, good. Actually, do you want to stand there and, yeah.
I can, like that.
yeah.
All right.
Turn the switch on for him.
Where was I? Oh, and weeding is also okay. Weeding is also a part of that process. If something is old or outdated, or if it has bad information, like weeding is a part of the collection development process. And I'll just keep talking. Included in this process is determining the size and type of, the size and type of collection for every branch. Every branch has its own vibe, it has its own needs. So collections at, the collection at Edisto is going to be a little different from the collection at like Keith's. So we have to take all those things into consideration when we're selecting titles. And just as a reminder about collection development, collection development is just a small part of the process. Like selecting titles is a small part. Systems, we have frontline staff, we have patrons who are all involved in the collection development process in one way or another. Okay, Alex, next slide. All right, so I'm pretty sure y'all are already aware of this, but I just want to show it real quick just to demonstrate. When we're talking about collection development, we're talking about collecting all of these things for 18 branches, right? So it's not just books, audiobooks, Chromebooks, hot pressure monitors. We have 115 research databases in conjunction with the state library. We have print magazines and newspapers, digital magazines and newspapers. There's a lot of stuff that we are purchasing and providing access to for the public. So it can be overwhelming if you think about all of it at one time. All right, Alex. All right, so next I'm going to talk a little bit about the process from selecting something to it actually being on the shelf. And specifically, I'm talking about books in this example. And as I'm talking about this, remember that, as a large organization, our process is different from ordering something from Amazon or a bookstore for your own personal needs, right? We have, it's a larger process. It includes a lot of different procedures to get things from the vendor to the shelf. So, seeing titles for all 18 branches, it involves first identifying a subject matter or an author or whatever it might be, and that can come from a lot of different places, which I'll talk about in a minute. But identifying something that needs to be selected, ordering the thing, and then purchasing the thing from any number of our vendors. And then once we receive it, we have to make sure that it is the thing that we received, and we have the correct number of things that we purchased. And once that has been verified, then it goes to processing. It gets all the stamps, all the spine labels, all the things that are needed to identify the book. And once that happens, then it's cataloged so that it can be accessible by the public. And once it's cataloged, it's then assigned to a branch and then distributed to the branches. So there's a lot of process, procedure, there's a lot of checks and balances, there's a lot of quality control that is involved in getting something from one of our vendors to the shelf. So it's, quality control is a major thing for our selection process because we want to make sure that patrons can find what they need, they have access to what they need, and what they find in the catalog matches what is actually on the shelf. All right, so we order from several different vendors. If you notice, Baker & Taylor down here is crossed out. I know we mentioned it probably a couple of board meetings ago, but I'll mention it here again. So Baker & Taylor shut down late last year. They are a major vendor of books, not just for us, but for the entire nation. So they folded their services pretty quickly, which put everyone kind of in a tailspin. Luckily, it didn't impact us as much because we had already started diversifying where we get our titles and our titles from. There are some smaller libraries and organizations who were not as lucky, and they've had to struggle and scramble to figure out how to get things to their shelves. Just real quick, I just want to point out Hoopla, Libby, and Overdrive, which are our ebooks, audiobooks, and all of our digital content. We have Canopy, which provides movies. Regal is music, and Flipster are digital magazines, journals, and newspapers. So again, there's a lot of content out there available to our public. I believe if you have any questions, I think you have to address it to Angela. This is
I just wondered what the split was between print and digital.
I think that's covered in another
Cool.
slide.
Okay.
The split between digital and print, I think that's covered in another
Yes.
slide.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, Alex. So we order items. The way we order things comes from a lot of different places. Patron suggestions are very important because we want to be responsive to our communities. There are staff suggestions because they are on the front line and interacting with the public, and they see and understand what patron needs. There are obviously publisher lists and suggestions, book review publications, and then there's popular media. We're all consuming media in some form or fashion, and we'll see things that are out there and should be included in our collection. We pay a lot of attention to local authors. We respond to library programs. So if there's a library program on, Sea Island culture, we're going to try and make sure we have titles that support those programs. We try to anticipate community needs. Community needs and communities shift all the time, so we have to pay attention to that. And obviously there are vendor lists. All right, so here are the numbers that you were asking about. So we have a whole lot of content in Hoopla and Overdrive. There are digital items. Well over 1 million digital items that are accessible via Hoopla and Overdrive. And with our physical items, that's circulation. There's almost 2.5, nope. there's a lot of digital content. I can't do the math in my head, I'm sorry. Via Hoopla and Overdrive. We have more physical items than, is that right? No, we don't. We have so much more digital content than physical content because that's the direction things are moving. And as far as circulation goes, recent years digital has been major and is outpacing our physical circulation. Even though it's still very important, I myself still prefer physical books to digital, but digital needs are increasing year after year. All right, so next what we'll be talking about is the reconsideration of materials. All right, Alex.
And this is the packet. I'm going to hand it off to board members. Y'all can take a look at it. We're happy to show this to anyone. Vic, this is the packet that you will be getting officially. But this is an example of the discovery packet that Haley is going to show.
So we were talking about collection development. And a natural part of collection development is reconsidering items that are in our collection. You know, it's important, it's crucial, it's critical to making sure we are providing the correct and appropriate kind of content for our library users. It's important to us to be responsive to community needs and provide the opportunity for staff or patrons to alert us to something that they think shouldn't be in our collection, or if it should be in a different part of the collection. All right. Oh, no, you can go. Yeah. So real quick, I want to just talk about the reconsideration form itself. I think you all have a version of it. So I'm just going to kind of talk through it. Kind of like Angela was saying, you know, this is an important process for us. We want to make sure we're crossing all of our T's and dotting all of our I's. You know, we're doing our due diligence when it comes to reconsiderations by the public. We want to make sure we are approaching it from an unbiased perspective. We want to make sure we are really evaluating the item that is being reconsidered. You know, we take it seriously, and we want to make sure we are doing the process justice. So what that means is that we are also, in order for us to do that part, we have some expectations of the public. One is that they read the entire item, or they watch the entire movie, or whatever it is. They have to fill out the entire form, and they can only challenge one item at a time, and they can't challenge an item that has already been challenged, going through the process totally. And that just helps. And the reason we state all that up front is to make sure that the patron knows what to expect, and they know how to go into the form, and that basically they're not wasting their time. All right. All right, so taking a look at the form, there's just basic information at the top. You do have to be a Charleston County resident or own property in Charleston County. And we want to verify that you read the entire thing, if it is a book. And then the questions that we ask are basically a prompt to make sure the patron is doing their due diligence, because we are expecting that of ourselves. We want to make sure the patron is thinking about the book in context and thinking about the book on the whole, and not just like specific passages from the book. Let's see. So we're curious, but we ask how they become aware of the book, just so that we know exactly how things have transpired. So if they were browsing in the children's area and they find, I don't know, the coders went to Everett, just like, how did this book get there? You know, it shouldn't be there. And, you know, just going through the whole process of figuring out how something got to where it is. And again, number 4, you know, we're asking for one credible source, just to encourage the patron to think about where this, what other sources are saying about this title. What is being said in public domain about the title itself, and just what, for better or worse, what is being discussed around this book. And then there's just a question about what you want us to do with the book. So we take that information from the patron, and then we ourselves read the entire thing. We gather all relevant information that we can find on the title, all reviews, interviews, publisher information, anything related to the title that we can gather, and we make sure we read it, and then get together and discuss the title. I think I've gone on to the next slide. Right. So like I was saying, the reconsideration working groups operate for a calendar year and address titles as they come in. So like I was saying, we read all reviews, author interviews, opinions, anything that we can find about the title. Once we have done that essential reading, we get together as a group and make a recommendation to Angela, who is the final decider. Angela makes the decision about what we actually do with the book. Sometimes she agrees, sometimes she doesn't. That's fine, she decides. We just make a recommendation. All right, Alex. All right, so this is just kind of a breakdown of all the titles that we have, that a reconsideration form has been submitted for since 2017. As you can see, 10 have been integrated into a different collection. So if it was in children's, maybe it moved over to teens, or if it was in teens, it was moved over to the adult section. And 17 have remained where they are. 28 titles have been challenged overall since 2017, which is very small. You can't even see the color of piece of the pie chart up here. Very small in comparison to how many titles we have in our collection. So to me, that feels like 28 titles over how many years? A lot of years. I think that's, we're doing pretty well for ourselves. Okay, Alex. Just some brief information about our reconsideration. About our reconsideration process. So last fiscal year, there were 22 reconsiderations submitted. And 14 of those went through the whole process. Sometimes things don't make it through the process because sometimes patrons submit more than one at a time, or it's something that has already, a decision has already been made about it, or they haven't read the entire thing. So, and when, to be clear, when a patron submits a reconsideration and they haven't read the entire thing, we encourage them to read it and then submit a reconsideration for it. We don't tell them, that's it, like, you can't submit a reconsideration anymore. And a small breakdown of submissions from fiscal year 2025. A few teen nonfiction. It was mostly teen fiction from last fiscal year that we had to review. Sorry if I'm speaking through this. I have like 5 minutes. So some youth card statistics that Angela mentioned earlier. So total youth cards, over 26,000, and only 188 have chosen limited or restricted access. And regarding L squared, there are over almost 62,000 L squared accounts, and only 76 have opted out of L squared. So for those who are interested in changing access for the children, it's there, and they have the option to do that. Okay, Alex. And Lastly, I don't have any numbers or anything to share with the parent caregiver collection, but I do want to talk about kind of how we're approaching this. So what we're doing is thinking about, as Angela mentioned earlier, difficult subject matter that will require some more discussion between parents or caregivers with their kids. And it could be, divorce, it could be death and dying, it could be like anything that is, not just things that are hard to talk about, but parents still feel that are important to discuss with their kids. And so what we're going to do by the end of this year is figure out, what topics are included in that, which is a major process to figure out. And we're going to work with our frontline staff to help us decide what those subject matters are, what the titles are, and then we're going to integrate those into the adult collection. And so only adults or adults who allow their kids to check out those books will be able to get to them. Right?
So that collection will be focused on the parent or the caregiver, not necessarily the children.
Correct.
And we are determining what will be going into that collection at this time. The discovery packet, I believe, is floating around. Yes, and so that is an example of what the staff work group does. They look at things, like you said, they look at the title. They look, is it fixing it?
Yeah.
Okay. Graham, Melissa, have y'all seen it?
I have.
Okay. Great, you can pass it up here. And so a lot of work goes into this from the side point of the library staff. This is why we want to make sure that we have read the entire book. The patron has, that we have, because I will say that there are people that do not want us to remove books at all. Okay? They think that removing books or moving books around is a form of censorship. Now, I am here to say that from a, come on, Kendra, okay. From a professional standpoint, of course, we take a look at our collection, and of course, we want to make sure that our collection meets the needs of our current community. Big Heart Sex Criminals was ordered 10 years ago. A lot can change in 10 years, obviously. Fair enough, there's an Amazon TV show coming out about it, so it's still popular in some cases, but the actual graphic novel and its subsequent 2 volumes is just not a good fit for our current collection, even in the adult area. So we feel very comfortable after having gone through. So Vic challenged it, anyone could challenge it, read the entire thing. We had the form so that just in case a group comes to us and says, you are censoring material, you are pulling books from the library, we can say we have gone through the process, it has been officially challenged, here is our discovery packet, here is how we made our decision. Okay? If anyone says, why did you pull the other 2 books, they were not officially challenged. The logic is, if an item was challenged and removed in a series, logically we're going to look at the tone of the entire series. So that does internally, and we were well within our right, as librarians who curate our collection, we were well within our right to say, hey, if book 1, book 2, or whatever is not a good fit for our current collection, logically we will look at it and say, has the rest of the series aged well? Is this a good fit? Is there a newer version that maybe has a modified and updated take to it, or is it just not a good fit for our collection whatsoever? So no, while the volume 2 and 3 were not officially challenged, that was triggered because of the original challenge, and we felt very comfortable. I feel very comfortable. I can say to any group, whether they are happy we withdrew it or mad at us we withdrew it, I can say that we are very comfortable with the decision. It was per policy. These 3 volumes did not age well, and they are not a good fit for our collection. I am happy to answer any questions that the board has. You're welcome to reach out to me. I'm happy to sit down with you. We can talk through this in depth. I'm sure Haley and I can answer any additional questions that you might have. I'm always available. Because it is 10 o'clock, we do have the Riley Center here. Alyssa, I'm happy to answer questions in a bit. Kendra, I'm happy to have you come up, and I do believe we have your presentation ready. Kendra, why don't you just introduce yourself? We are so happy that we were able to have this community assessment facilitated by the Riley Center. She has a wonderful team. Having the Riley Center facilitate this has actually been very helpful to us, because having a third party reach out to the community, that means that it is unbiased data, and that whenever they are interfacing with the community, it is not librarians saying, well, what do you like about us? It is, an institution asking about an institution. So fantastic. Kendra does fabulous work, and I'm going to turn it over to her. Thank you so much, Kendra.
Okay, great. I can do it on computer. Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you all for having us. As Angela mentioned, I'm Kendra Stewart. I'm director of the Riley Center and a faculty member at the College of Charleston. I want to start by quickly introducing my team. We had a group of folks with different types of expertise who work with the Riley Center working on this project. Lauren, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Lauren Trackman. I'm a fellow with the Riley Center. Hi, I'm Shelby Shugard. I'm the director of research at the Riley Center. Hi, I'm Elisa Von Marshall. I'm a statistician.
And we also had a few graduate students, including
Hi, I'm Isabella. I'm a graduate assistant.
So I'm going to quickly introduce what we did. All right. A little bit about the Riley Center. I'm going to give you an overview of what we did and what we're going to talk about today. And then some members of my team are going to take out different pieces of that. I encourage you to interrupt and ask questions if you want any clarification. But we have saved time at the end for discussion or question and answer. So again, I want to thank you all for allowing us this opportunity. You are looking at a group of people who have always loved libraries, so it was pretty fun to be able to dig into investigating some of your questions to help support your strategic plan. Just a minute plug on what the Riley Center is. We are a public service institute associated or affiliated underneath the College of Charleston. We use faculty, staff, students, and even community experts to work with local governments and nonprofits around the state of South Carolina. We do all kinds of things from planning to assessment to studies to professional development and association management. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about what we were trying to do, and we'll visit the findings regarding collections and programs and give you some overall takeaways. So just to refresh your memory, the purpose of what we were trying to do was to talk to both staff and the community about some of the execution of your strategic plan, and particularly around the questions of how your programs and collections are meeting the needs of our community. And so we started this last summer, and first we did a deep dive into data, both census and other data held by Charleston County, looking at what our community looks like, what branches they use, as well as Elisa did a lot of looking at your data that you collect through the library system. And you'll see some of that today. Next, we did both surveys for staff and community members, and we had tremendous response rates. As you can see, over 80% of your staff responded, which is very high. And the community, this is probably the highest survey result we've ever had doing, and we've done a lot of surveys in this region across the state as well. But we had over 5,200 responses. The survey was mostly taken electronically, but we did have a number of people fill it out in paper, as we also offered it in Spanish. A couple of observations, you'll see a lot of the survey results interwoven into this presentation. Respondents were, unfortunately, overwhelmingly older, whiter, and more female than the general population. I will say that 100% reflects almost every survey we've done in the last 10 years. However, with such a large response rate, we are very pleased that there were large enough numbers of respondents of other demographic groups that we could still do some good analysis. And so we feel very confident in the results that we have here today because the response rate was so high. Then we also did focus groups with community members as well as staff. And we tried to dive into some of the different groups that you all identified, and at the end you'll see some of the comments. That helped us put some contextualization around what we learned or what we heard in the survey. Our goal is to get any feedback you have today. This is a high overview of the whole study, because we were trying to keep it into a short time, but we have a pretty in-depth report that we will incorporate any feedback you have into today and have for you very soon. So, all right, handing it over to library.
Hi y'all, thanks for being here. Thanks for having us here today. I'm going to kick us off by kind of just talking about some of the results we had around how people viewed visiting the library and their experiences. So first off, I'm going to be flipping a little bit between results from our community survey and kind of some of the data, but we're going to start here by looking at some of the results from the survey. So here you see the branches that respondents were most likely to respond going to. Unsurprisingly, Maine Library, Mount Pleasant, Wando, Beast Ferry, these are the libraries that respondents reported going to most commonly. So they picked their top 3. These are also some of your largest library branches, so that's perhaps not overwhelmingly surprising. And then here, we're looking at some of your data. And here we can see where people are coming from for when they're coming to visit the library. So where across the county are they coming from? And we can see that people are, similar to that last slide, traveling the most to some of your largest branches. So some of the branches that are on the left side are Mount Pleasant, Maine, Wando, Beast Ferry again. And so we're seeing that people are traveling from more across the county in order to go to some of those branches. Your more rural or remote branches, places like Sullivan's Island, Folly Beach, or McClellanville, they're primarily serving the communities that are closest to them. But again, that's not surprising given some of your larger regional branches are where people are traveling to the most. But we thought it was interesting to see kind of those patterns. So now we wanted to get a sense of what were the most common factors that people had that determined where they went to visit. You can see that overwhelmingly proximity to home was the most common factor that people reported on how they picked their library branch. This makes sense. Charleston County is a big county. Proximity to where they are is going to be often something that they're going to think about. You can see that hours of operation, collections of materials, and programs offered kind of came in as kind of those next secondarily most common reasons. I will note that overall, you see about 9% of respondents said that specialized services, so things like notary services or printing, were important to them. However, for certain subgroups, so particularly Hispanic subgroups, Black and African American respondents, and rural respondents, they actually prioritize these specialized services even more, implying that maybe branches that serve kind of disproportionate those communities may want to focus on those services more than some of the other services in particular. We also then asked about when they wanted to come visit the library, and age really predicted their preferred time. So on the screen, the yellow bars are going to be respondents' preferences for those who are over 50, and the blue bars are going to be those who are 18 to 50. And you'll see the yellow bars are the highest around weekday afternoons and weekday mornings, so those in that older set are going to be more likely to want to visit the library during those times. Excuse me. And you'll see the blue lines, so those under 50 are more likely going to do so on Saturday mornings or weekday evenings. This is unsurprising. This is a group that probably has a higher working population, and so they may be less able to access the library during those weekday mornings and afternoons. And then, so we asked kind of why they're going to the library, when they want to go, and then we asked about the barriers. Do they see barriers? How frequently do these barriers prevent them from visiting the library? On the screen you see yellow is going to be sometimes, and blue is going to be often. The first thing to note is that very, very few people say that there is a barrier that frequently prevents them from being able to visit the library. You can see those blue bars, they're very small. Where we see sometimes happen more often is around kind of library hours sometimes, or the awareness of relevant offerings can be sometimes a barrier. But again, that's only sometimes, and very few people frequently face barriers. I will note that among kind of the younger population and the Hispanic population, awareness of offerings is kind of an area that they noticed was more often a barrier, and that transportation came up particularly as sometimes or often a barrier, particularly around Hispanic and African American respondents. So those are some areas where you saw it a little bit higher in different subgroups, but overall, people did not report significant barriers in being able to visit the library. And this was really consistent with some of the feedback we heard in the focus groups. So across the focus groups, libraries were overwhelmingly seen as these trusted community hubs. They're seen as safe and comfortable and dependable spaces for accessing resources. People talked about them as a third place where they could come and be able to access resources without really feeling like they were being asked something of themselves. And so they really valued this free space, especially for hosting events, for children to socialize, complete schoolwork, interact with other kids, for older adults to socialize and access programming, and for individuals with disabilities to also be able to explore different surroundings. And so people really, again and again throughout these focus groups, talked about how much they loved the libraries, how much they valued being able to come to these spaces. And then, so they're really enjoying coming to spaces. What are some of the things that they're doing? Checking out physical materials was overwhelmingly the most common thing people reported doing when they came to the library, followed by some of these other activities. I will note though, similar to kind of those specialized services, the internet, Wi-Fi, and public computers were very important to certain subgroups. So you had about 70% of Black and African American respondents report using those services when they came into the library, and about 44% of rural respondents noting using those resources. And so while checking out physical materials, continues to be the most common, there were certain resources that were particularly important for certain groups. And so just to sum up some of the takeaways, the library is really seen as this wonderful third space that people really highly valued. And that public computers, internet, Wi-Fi usage, as well as some specialized services are particularly commonly used among certain subgroups, particularly Black, Hispanic, and rural residents. And then these were some opportunities that people in the focus groups noted as some opportunities kind of to think about for kind of the general climate of visiting library. They thought about, are there opportunities to expand awareness of library offerings, to place greater focus on creating opportunities that are welcoming for different groups, people like non-English speakers or LGBTQIA communities. They thought about, are there ways in which the library can grow partnerships with organizations with expertise working with different individuals, particularly those with diverse needs? And then are there opportunities to expand access to public non-traditional resources, so things like those computers, particularly in communities with higher minority and rural residents. So, thank y'all. That's going to close out the visiting library section, and we'll turn to programming.
All right, thanks, Shelby. So our survey did dive much more deeply into programming, and we wanted to first kind of parse out who the audience that survey respondents were interested in programming for. Now, it's important to note that if we were to combine all of the children, right, from infant to teens, that would be about like 45%, 48% are somewhat or very interested. The reason we asked by particular age group was that it gives more granular data and it aligns with how CCPL actually collects programming data as well, so we could compare what they're saying they want versus what they're attending and what's offered. For the infant and toddler group, birth to age 5, story times and early literacy programs and arts, crafts, or DIY were the most desired programs. We did throughout, as you saw Shelby report as well, when there were significant differences for key demographic groups, we also are highlighting those. So when we look at Hispanic and Black or African American or rural respondents in these groups, we found that they had more interest in fitness, health, and wellness programs as well. We also dug into your data. This is for the last fiscal year in terms of story times. We know this is the one sort of like standardized and mandated program that CCPL offers, that it aligns really strongly with your literacy core value and mission. And so what you'll see here in these blue charts is the median attendance by branch. And unsurprisingly, this aligns with like how large the branch is, right? So you'll see median attendance may be much smaller in, say, St. Paul, Hollywoods, but that makes sense given the branch size. The number over here indicates the total number of programs offered. So Johns Island actually had the most storytime programs at 228. And that ranges from about 18 to 228 per branch. Now for the elementary age children, grades K through 5, these folks said they were most interested in arts, crafts, or DIY and STEAM programs. There was slightly more interest in cultural heritage and history programs for Hispanic respondents and for Black or African American respondents as well. This is similar for middle school age children, but these are flipped, right? So STEAM programs were the most, they were the most interested in STEAM programs for this group, but also a very strong interest in arts, crafts, DIY, followed by food cooking or gardening programs. We see here as well that for Hispanic respondents, for Black and African American respondents, and rural respondents, there was much more interest in cultural heritage or history programming. For high school age children, grades 9 through 12, there was a ton of interest in this broad category of life skills. So of course, teen-tween life skills is first, but you also see that flow across to financial education, to workforce and career development. You see interest in STEAM programs and interest in food, cooking, or gardening as well here. Would note that this interest was key across all demographic groups, but it was even higher or more prioritized in Black respondents, Hispanic respondents, and rural respondents, that they had more of an interest in these life skills programs, financial education, and workforce and career development. For adults, the strongest interest was in both author talks or book discussions and food, cooking, or gardening programs. Again, similar to for the teen and middle school age children, we saw more interest in those life skills related programming among minority respondents, Black, African American, and Hispanic respondents, saying they're more interested in those. Now, we also asked about barriers to attending programs, and the key barrier that we saw was around awareness, just not being aware of the breadth or depth of the programming that is offered. The second most cited barrier was the timing of programs not working. This was particularly true for those working age adults, right? Ages like 18 to 50, this was a little bit higher. And then there was also a little bit of response in terms of sometimes not aligning with their interests or just not having interest in the programs that were offered. So focus group participants added some qualitative depth to this and similarly highlighted that awareness is limited. In every focus group, there was at least one person saying, oh, I wish the library did that, and then learning they do that, right? And being like, oh, it's great, I just wasn't aware. I didn't know that this was already happening. They talked about awareness stemming a lot from word of mouth, from personal connections with library staff, and from just having that relationship and partnership built with CCPL already. Participants who did attend programs overwhelmingly reported positive experiences with those programs. And so a few key takeaways from both the survey and the focus group. The library can provide access to important programming for community members with limited means. We particularly heard in rural communities, they're looking for things that the library offers that they might not have access to otherwise, right? Like fitness, wellness, food, nutrition programs. Those minority community members have interests in more programs focused on life skills, such as financial education, physical health and wellness, workforce development. And there is an opportunity for branches to really think about how to raise attendance through better awareness, through understanding the scheduling and timing barriers as well. And some opportunities were also highlighted in the focus group. So one thing that was mentioned was having direct newsletter type updates to dedicated liaisons within community organizations. Thinking through programming series that occur at regular times and intervals, much like story time, is really helpful to key groups such as homeschooling families wanting that consistency in programming. Blending social connection with learning, so including some hands-on interactive programs, was repeatedly identified as the most exciting type of programming for children across all age groups. And creative outreach, so continuing to build off of CCPL's community outreach through things like trivia nights, themed contests, author events, really engaging with newcomers to the Charleston County community to increase engagement. I'm going to turn it over to Elisa to talk a little bit more about the collections data.
Hi.
we took a look at your, the data that reflects what you actually have in your existing collections, and you can see here that of your 3 target audiences, your juvenile collections is what circulates the most, which makes sense given that you may take 10 board books out for every 1 fiction book for an adult. We also noted that you will lower young adult circulation, probably representative of your collection itself. And then the other thing that we found interesting was nearly 20% of your adult materials are in the AV category. So there's still a lot of patrons that are circulating DVDs and CDs and things like that. Your respondents are still most interested in the physical books, but you can see that there's a lot of interest as well in the ebooks and audiobooks here. Digital assets, as you'll see, are very popular when we actually look at what is being collected. So of the physical materials, again, we broke it down a little bit further. You can see that there's still some 200,000 graphic novels are circulated, but they're broken up into different categories. And then again, you can see over on the far side, the books on CD as well are still fairly highly circulated, even though that is a medium that's disappearing with the rise in e-audiobooks, but there's still a fair amount that are circulated physically. And here, this shows the rise in popularity of the online platforms. So this includes Hoopla, Overdrive, a couple of other resources that aren't as popular, but RV Digital and FreeGal. And I think 2025 was the first year that the e-audiobooks and ebooks maybe overtook the physical circulation. So this is consistent with the survey results that we're seeing, that they're heavily accessed by library patrons. And then there's one other chart of the online resources. They're not the circulated materials, but it's things like digital subscriptions to news, ancestry websites, language websites, things, financial data, that every vendor has a slightly different metric for how it's accessed. So that's why the news, I think every news article is one hit, which is why Newsbank, for example, shows so much, is such a higher bar over there. But you can see that these are fairly well used. They're just not well known. There's limited awareness of these in the focus groups, but we did find that once people were finding them, there was a lot of use for them amongst certain patrons. And then, of course, less than 6% of respondents reported that they were often facing a barrier to this, and there were things like having a wait for popular novels that had come out. There were a handful of those respondents, but not people reporting that was an often barrier for them.
All right, so we dug into this a little bit further again in the focus groups and found, again, much like programming, focus group participants were just often surprised by the extent of the collections, particularly beyond the physical collections. Participants rarely reported facing challenges in finding desired books or resources, and even when there's a hold time, that didn't seem to stop them from accessing those resources. Awareness of the breadth of topics, the material formats, particularly digital collections or those non-traditional online resources vary, but few had a full knowledge of the entire extent of offerings that were available. Some of the takeaways were that books and sort of those traditional e-resources, e-books, e-audiobooks were really highly valued and well used by the community. There are opportunities to continue to grow awareness and usage of those non-traditional resources, including online database, just findability and letting folks know what's out there and how to access it. But that said, respondents really rarely reported barriers in accessing materials, including electronic materials and digital materials. Some opportunities that came back in the focus groups regarding collections were, again, thinking really strategically about partnerships with specific groups. So, as an example, historians at local churches connecting to their neighborhood library came up. Early literacy programs building on the partnership that you already have with CCSD. Really ensuring that information about relevant materials to those particular key demographic groups are provided through liaisons in the community. And then investigating alternative pathways to disseminate information about sharing some online resources such as streaming services or e-audiobooks or e-books. We did delve into some target group specific takeaways across key demographics and made sure that in partnership with CCPL, we were thinking about key community leaders and groups who might really have their finger on the pulse of what's happening within their communities and how and why they are or are not accessing library resources. So first, we talked to folks across the interfaith community. And here, participants really noted opportunities for the library to connect more with religious communities, right? So again, this idea of having a possible liaison. They talked about having more contemporary or relevant cultural and faith-related content to really target some younger audiences, saying that some of it might feel dated or not as engaging and exciting to young people within their congregations or communities. They also talked about expanding programming to blend education and community engagement, really tying into faith-based interests, things like lectures, author talks, grief support, open mic nights. And here again, they talked about just awareness of the breadth of offerings in terms of collections and programming as one of the key barriers. For the individuals with disability community, they again really expressed that the library is this valued space for adults with disabilities in particular to come and be a part of the community. They talked about loving the mobile library for those who can't easily travel. And the only suggestion was just making sure that staff were engaged in current training on disabilities as well and how to engage with adults with disabilities. We also talked to some veterans groups, and these groups talked about veterans really appreciating and taking advantage of job-related training and technology support. They talked a lot about those life skills, right? Microsoft Suite training, resume building, understanding and accessing LinkedIn Learning, particularly for those who are transitioning out of service. They also talked about developing partnerships to promote awareness and understand programs that can support veterans and their families. The LGBTQIA community talked about meeting people where they are, hosting events moving beyond this traditional quiet library type image, and welcoming signage or stickers, letting people know that this is a space that is open to all community members and residents. In the Black African American community, leaders of that community talked a lot about more intentional engagement beyond just Black History Month, echoing kind of what we saw in the survey as well, with interest in cultural programming, in history and heritage programming. They talked about community partnerships with local churches, local schools, connecting African Americans to resources. There was a strong interest that was highlighted in local history and genealogy, particularly in the interfaith community, around church history, Charleston's Black history. And they emphasized the importance of empowering young African American people to understand the history local to this community, right? Again, awareness was highlighted as an issue, just understanding and getting awareness out there of the programs and resources that were available. For the Hispanic or Latino community, there was an emphasis on having more collections and hard copies of books available in Spanish. They also talked about other growing languages and groups in the area. Portuguese was mentioned. This is not particular to the Hispanic community, but we will say we also heard this from staff that, you know, libraries near the Joint Base, for instance, they get requests for materials in German or French or other languages, and not having those hard copies there can be a barrier. The Hispanic community also talks about libraries as being valued for providing a safe space, English classes, youth activities. They really valued the efforts made to have materials in Spanish, to have bilingual staff. And they did talk about this lack of awareness for some folks about the ability to access library resources or get library cards if, say, they're a green card holder or they're not full citizens. They also talked about the access to digital resources, computer classes, and parent-focused workshops as being particularly important in their community. And bilingual family literacy projects are very appreciated here as well. again, with the awareness, it's just really like outreach can be inconsistent or stronger in some branches than others, and so it can be difficult for Spanish speakers to really navigate what resources are available if they're not already plugged in. We also talk to folks who have young children or use the library particularly with a mind to their entire family, right? Bringing in their young children, teenage children, all different ages. And what we found are they said overwhelmingly libraries are a vital space for children. They love the after-school programs. They love summer reading. They talked about the learning support that's provided in these spaces. And they talked about having a safe, free community space for teens and young readers in particular. So the mention of having libraries that are after-school bus drop-off locations like Bees Ferry and Wando was highly valued. There's an emphasis on early literacy that came out in talking to all of these groups, really thinking about the importance of children learning to read early by grade 3. The reward system for reading milestones was mentioned as something that the library could possibly tap into. And there was a recommendation of offering predictable and consistent children's programming to really make it easy for families to build that into their busy schedules. Finally, they talked about the collections, such as collections of books and museum passes came up repeatedly as something that is really highly valued, but maybe under-promoted or there's a lack of awareness for families and children. Finally, we talked specifically to the homeschooling community in this area. They echoed some of what we have already talked about, but they also talked about the opportunity to use the library as a space for school-age children to connect with their peers, right? And having that regularly scheduled program would allow them to build it into their own curriculum, right? So regular opportunities that extend over multiple weeks rather than one-off programming, something like a research paper opportunity or a book club, meet with a librarian on writing skills, things like that. They also talked about computer and computer program training as useful. They love the maker spaces, but talked about improving access and awareness to those for homeschooled children. And then just, again, regular programming and an emphasis on programming about crafts, reading time, game days, things like that. Yeah?
Do you have any idea what percentage of the population is homeschooled?
I think we have that number, and our report will have that number.
There's not really good statistics on exactly the population that are homeschooled in the community, and it's changed over time, but it still represents a fairly small minority in general of most school-age children.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we just wanted to end on a slide with several key takeaways across all of the data we reviewed, across the surveys, the focus groups, the vast amount of census data and library data that we reviewed. Essentially, it does appear that collections and programs do align with the needs of the Charleston County community and your residents across age groups and demographic groups. The programming is broadly appealing. It serves a diverse audience, diverse interests, but awareness remains one of the key challenges here. And in terms of collections, most respondents were very satisfied with the diverse and broad array of collections materials. They rarely feel that they often experience barriers to access. Some key sort of next steps are just to build on and expand some of the successful partnerships to be more targeted in fostering engagement with some of these core constituencies and communities to help increase awareness, access, and usage. And then finally, just want to end on this positive note that Shelby already touched on. We heard overwhelmingly throughout the survey and focus groups what a trusted community resource that CCPL is and how much it is valued as a third space for those in the community. So I know we have plenty of time for questions and discussion.
I wondered what kind of social media the library is using. I don't know if that's something you can answer or Angela can, to try to increase awareness.
Yeah. Yes. We are on Facebook. We have our website. Our website actually is our best way to connect with the community, and I'm glad that we are investing in a new website and we are making it more mobile accessible. We do have a Facebook page. We do have an Instagram page. Those have been the highest use. We're always looking at different opportunities I don't think Alexis is here, but, oh, she has, yeah, Alexis is,
And we have a YouTube page.
and we have a YouTube page. Thank you. Yes, yes. So those are sort of our big three. And again, our website is the entity that gets the most traffic.
So in my past, I've been on Facebook a lot. I haven't really been on the other socials. And I like to try to share out when you have an event that's going on. And the Edisto branch used to have kind of an active page, and I could share out what they were doing. And then I see that there's like a general Facebook
Yes.
page, but it's spotty in what it covers branch-wise. Could there be more effort put into something that's shareable? Because some people might think to go to the website, but a lot of people don't. They're just on their phone all day. And then boom, they see something and it triggers, oh, that's something I could go do.
Yes, we don't, and that's a very good question, Melissa. We don't have individual Facebook pages for each branch because that would be very unwieldy as a system. But we are hearing from the group, like we know that communication out to the community is one of our priorities, and again, from the strategic plan standpoint. So we thought about the same thing. How can we better spotlight, particularly those small branches that have a really cool program, and probably they are online, the users are online, so how can we get that information out there? So yeah, good suggestion.
In your focus group, in your more conversational events, did you touch on patrons' views as to how they value or how they rate the programming and their interactions with the public library versus other public services that are available, whether it's Parks and Rec or just common services provided by the county? Did we at all delve into where do you rate the library? And then second question regarding funding. Do folks understand where the library gets their funding from, or how funding sources impact what they can interact with at the library?
We didn't really ask them to do any comparison among other public services. Occasionally they would come up, but most of the discussion focused around the library, and again, overwhelmingly positive responses. And when there were things that were brought up about, oh, I wish there was this, it was very interesting. Very often someone in the same focus group would say, oh, did you know they actually do that? And that's where we weren't even aware of as many of the services as other participants were. I would say there's maybe a basic understanding of the funding, but we had very little, if any, complaints of things the library wasn't doing. And in fact, overwhelmingly, particularly among folks who supported the Spanish-speaking community, they talked a lot about, how there were so many things they were trying to get their community to be comfortable with using, and it had nothing to do with the library, but more their lack of understanding of how things worked here, or maybe just some general concern about using any kind of public service at this time. But overall, we didn't really hear much about, oh, I wish the library, we heard occasionally I have to wait for a popular book,
Right.
but there was very little, I can't find a book I need, I can't access something. I don't know if, we all took place in different, we all took turns in different focus groups, but I don't know if Shelby or Lauren have anything.
The only thing I would add is that multiple people in the community said something along the lines of, the library is like the best third space. Like, this is like such an important third space that doesn't ask me to buy anything when I step into it. And I think that was pretty consistent across, that they see this. And so they may also see other places, like parks similarly, but that was a statement that we heard multiple people say in different ways. And so,
Was there an indication in the public interaction with our staff? Helpful? I wish they were more helpful. I wish they spoke Spanish.
I think overwhelmingly people were very happy with staff. When we had regular patrons in a focus group, they knew people by name, and they did see, particularly folks who come from lower income communities, found the library as a really important resource for things such as, printing their resumes or their children's homework, or, those types of resources that we mentioned, or getting training. One of the things we did talk with both staff and patrons about is, sometimes if there's not a lot of folks participating in a program, they would actually have argued that that was often a more valuable program, when they got this sort of one-on-one free help that they would have had to go somewhere to pay for, was extremely valuable to the community, particularly who had low technology skills or not really great resources at home.
Yeah, we would hear often patrons would say, well, I choose to go to this branch because of the staff, right? Or they would be like, well, I'm attending this program because the staff interacted with me personally, and it's that word of mouth, right? And so that ability to raise awareness, we heard that from staff as well. Like, I know if I'm going to talk to this person that they're going to come, right? And we can do the marketing, we can do the social media, and that's important too, but that personal connection was really important.
And there was, of course, it would be great if there were more bilingual speakers at the
Yes.
and there was also
Always,
a knowledge of more on the front end of, it's great that there are bilingual speakers, but if there were more.
Some people view the ability to talk computer is a bilingual skill that a lot of us need help with, so.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the information you shared. I found it very interesting. And I'm not sure if you can answer this question or Angela. I live in the vicinity of Bees Ferry, and I know that particular library is within walking distance of two schools, a middle school and a high school. And so I imagine you have a lot of children dropping in at that time. And I was just wondering, what services are offered for the students there? And also, is there like a particular after-school library staff that focus on programming and making sure the kids are, doing the right thing in the library? So I was just wondering if someone can.
I can talk about from an operational standpoint, and if there's any relevant data. I know that Bees is one of our most active locations. We have probably, and John has better stats, I think we have almost 400 teens or youth come into our library during the school year. Vic, that is your branch, I believe. We will be having a board retreat not once but twice, board meetings not once but twice here this year, and so I think we'll get to see the space. There is a designated teen space, but how the branch operates, first, we hire very carefully for that branch. We are very, very clear about when you apply for a job at Bees Ferry, you are part of the youth staff. If you are hired for circulation, if you are hired for adult, whatever it is, if you're a manager, doesn't matter, you are part of the youth staff because youth are such an important part of the building. During the school year, like I said, we have probably 400 kids come in. While there is a designated teen space, they will typically flip the auditorium, this space, into a designated teen space. We know that it gets very noisy for the other patrons, and we have noise complaints, and we do the best that we can to keep things quiet. Now, we do have a code of conduct specifically for the youth, and we do hold them accountable for it. And so if there are any behavioral issues or noise issues or things like that, the library staff are specifically trained to engage with the teens in a positive way to try to redirect. But if that doesn't work, they are asked to leave for the day, if not longer, or they might be banned just because they are not able to follow our very clear policies on behavior. And the behavior is, very simple. It's online. It's basically, please, mind your manners. Please be respectful of the space. And if you have questions, we're happy to help you. I know that the branch manager there and the branch staff interface regularly with the schools. They work with the schools to get a feel with the parents, because the kids will walk over, and so we are an after-school location for a lot of the kids, and so we do have tutoring there, we have programs there, we have Wi-Fi, kids bring their own devices, we have devices available, so we do the best that we can to answer their needs and to have relevant speakers and activities, and it's a very, very engaging branch. There is a makerspace there. That is where we have emerging technology. I know that is very popular with the teens, and we do have a thriving, as I'm sure you can imagine, volunteer program there. We have a wonderful candidate pool for the volunteer program where teens can be volunteers at that location. The summertime, it's interesting, it flips. It is actually one of our quieter locations comparatively because the kids, they are going there after school, they're out and about around the community. So actually, I think we put one of our meetings there in the summertime for that reason, so that it is quieter. I can't remember the calendar exactly. So it's kind of interesting. Whenever school is out of session, that branch is not as active. When school's in session, it's active pretty much 9 months out of the year. So that's from an operational standpoint. John, anything to add from Bees Ferry?
Well, we just added a new team staff member to the volume.
Excellent.
So
That's right, yes.
Staff work very hard to offer programs for the teams when they come in. They offer a wide variety each day to try to engage the kids coming in. Some of the kids come there after school or they have a practice that they're waiting to go to for a sports team. So for some kids, it might just be more of a social time.
Yes.
This might be a silly question, but is there like a cutoff, like the amount of teams allowed in the
Building capacity, there is building capacity, and so we do monitor that. We haven't hit building capacity. We're able to manage it because, as Jordan says, teens come and go. So they might, it's not like we have 400 teens all there all at once, but through the door count and just we're able to discern, we do have that volume of kids. So John's right, it could be that, they come in after school and they stay until we close, or they come in, they wait to be picked up, or they go to their practice. And so we are very aware of building capacity. We are very aware of the noise level too. I do believe that the branch manager recently instilled a new reminder system where she will go on the intercom and she will say, "Ladies and gentlemen, the building volume is getting quite loud. We need to lower it," and to manage that.
As opposed to shh.
Right. Yeah. We found that shushing probably doesn't work as well as you think it would.
It worked back in my day. I don't know.
But there weren't 400 of you. So yes. And so the strongest thing that we have going for us with that branch is truly our beautiful staff. We hire very, very strategically for our staff. John said that we added another team position so that we can sort of better manage just the volume. It's one of those things that people ask about, what are we doing to bring in the kids? And we point to Bees Ferry and we say, like, they're coming and they're staying. We've had a wonderful group of older teens. Usually teens, when they get their driver's license, they stop coming to the library. We usually have like a middle grade, yes, and then freshman and sophomore, but then they get, they turn 16 and they can work and things like that. But at Bees Ferry and our other branches, they've been coming here so long, they continue to come as older teens and they are visiting us as adults, which is, our retention rate is fantastic. So we're very proud of that. Was there anything from a data standpoint?
I would just note the data supports everything that you said, in the sense that it is, when you look at teen programs, like in numbers and attendance, like Bees Ferry is like off the chart. There's not really anything. It's like Bees Ferry's teen programs and Wando's story time. So like you're two huge outliers for everything else.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I've got a couple of questions. First of all, to great report. What are the key things from this report that you think we need to address?
Oh, what are they? I thought you were going to say what they were. Sorry.
I'm just curious.
Thank you, Linda. I think, again, this challenge of information and what we heard and when we dug around, it's sort of the typical challenge is that there's so much information in people's lives, and to your point earlier, that people all receive their information. Now they want it to come exactly to them in exactly the format they want, and so they're not going out to seek, like, oh, I think I'd like to go, most of them. There are some people who we heard from who said, I moved here and the first thing I did was look at the library website and go to a free movie night, and we were like, okay, that's pretty awesome. But in general, we more heard, I would go to the library more if I knew what was going on, and when you would say, well, here are the places you could find it, people aren't out there seeking the information. But one of the things we did find in talking with community members is they did have trusted sources that they regularly read. So they might not read a CCPL newsletter that came to them about what's happening, but if their church pastor called them or sent it in their church newsletter, or if somebody from the school district who worked with the Spanish-speaking families encouraged people to come, that they would then come because these were people they knew and trusted and they read things from. So, I mean, that was why we get into thinking about who are these community partners that can be partnered with to regularly share to create more exposure. So that was like a consistent, but not an unusual problem, but something that is more challenging to deal with. Other big things.
I mean, I think, yeah, the partnerships were a real strength, right? But building those partnerships out a little bit more intentionally, and I think one of the strengths we heard from both focus groups and the community and staff, right, it was like they know their branch well, they engage with their community really well and really intentionally, and they appreciate the autonomy to do so within the structure, right? And so just making sure that they're continuing to build those local partnerships, right? An interfaith example was like, oh, our church is down the block from John Dark, but like, we're not engaged with them, and how could we engage with them?
So
And that's
outreach, really.
Yeah.
yes.
And around digital resources, like maybe we'd say, oh, did you know you could get this on Hoopla? And they would say, oh, I would totally look at that all the time. Or, you know, but it's constantly changing, you know, all of the things you offer, so that even sometimes your regular library users were not as aware. The other thing I want to point out is that the surveys, of course, were answered by people over the age of 18. So when you see the high desire for STEAM programs and things for young people, it might not always align with how attendance is, because that's what parents would like to see their teenagers going to, you know, or having their teen learn some financial management. But to say that, you know, your attendance will be as great with those, but maybe there's an opportunity to communicate more with parents.
And last question. How is this going to be shared with you, Angela, and perhaps with the rest of us? Is there a report coming, or?
Yes, there is a report coming, and I know that the Riley Center does a wonderful job, and so we're going to look at format. I know it's a very robust report. So I'm sorry, Kendra, I haven't talked to it, but typically there's a white paper or a summary that we're able to share with the board. We can, you know, share however much or how little that we are, you know, that the board would like to know. I think a good starting point is, you know, like you were saying, you know, what are kind of the top things that has emerged from the data, and what are some actionable things that we could go from there. Kendra is right. With, you know, adults answering the survey, we do have to look at, we want to make sure that we are meeting the community need, and it sounds like, you know, our collections and programs are meeting the need. One thing that we, you know, have heard loud and clear is that people want us to do a better job getting the word out there. I was thrilled to hear from the focus groups that there were so many of them that would happily be our cheerleaders for the community, and that's something that we want to activate. And then also, you were saying outreach. This is part of our strategic plan. We're going to take everything that the Riley Center has given us, and the exec team and I are going to look at, you know, where can we have our staff do things like outreach strategically in the region, engaging with those partners, particularly that have indicated, we would love to know more about X, Y, and Z. How can we get the word out there? I also will be calling on board members as well, because all of y'all live in different regions or in different communities, and, you know, have different connections. So we know that y'all have resources as well, and that will be something that I will be reaching out with.
I'll just share a quick short story. I live on a small street, and we're a very close little street. When someone figured out how to use Libby,
Yes.
we all got together
Yes.
for wine and cheese.
There you go.
All of us left with Libby. So this isn't hard, it's just attention.
Yeah, word of mouth is the number one thing.
Yes.
People heard it.
And as a school teacher, with students that have reading issues, I try to connect my parents to getting a library card so that they can access Hoopla and Libby. So.
And the relationship with the school district is very strong. Like, we did meet with multiple people, and they had nothing but great things to say with the way the library system implemented the new rules and so forth. Judge Roll?
Do you have any data vis-a-vis how many of the people in the discussion groups and focus groups had access to the internet versus those that did not?
We did not ask that on the survey. I will say that, for example, the rural community said they were more likely to come to the library to use services like internet.
My point is, you're talking about more outreach, more interrelationships, more partnerships, etc. My question is, how do they get their information? If they are not on social media, Libby doesn't help them a bit.
Yeah.
My second question is, did you notice in any of the branches that they had a written schedule for the month up on programming and or activities?
So yes, to get to your first question though, that is why when we met with folks who were in communities that generally didn't have access, that is why they said they usually get their information from Diana, who runs the Hispanic outreach group, or, like that they were more likely to connect. The elderly African American community was more likely to get information from the education leader at their church than the internet or from their newsletter at their church. And so that, to get to your first one, agreed, like that was why we made this recommendation of to reach those folks. They are gonna rely on personal relationships with community leaders. And then to your second question, sorry, I can't remember what it was.
Written schedule.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I don't know if either of you could speak to that, but we certainly saw that in many branches.
We do have calendars, vacant trustees. Every location has, calendars, program calendars. And it's interesting, people will say they want the calendars, so we'll print the calendars out, but then no one takes the calendars. So we listen to what the community wants and needs. We are happy to email a PDF of the calendar, everything else, but I think like with the community groups, what we heard is that having that grassroots connection where, a staff member from a library can go over and walk over or make an appointment to drop off information or to talk about what's happening at the month, or even that week, and then to engage the community that way. So we're going to try a lot of different things to engage.
Got a couple of quick questions. What I heard throughout your presentation is the importance of safety, that this third space, as you describe it, because all of the respondents were adults, 18 plus, it's assumed that the majority of even those respondents were young parents perhaps, or that 20x to 50 is the pool of people that have children at home. So the importance of the libraries being perceived as a safe spot. Did you hear any respondents reporting the opposite, that they were fearful of the library or they were concerned about having their children at the library?
Not in focus groups, did we see any, we had thousands of open-ended
Just
responses that
right.
we read through.
Yeah. So in the open-ended responses, there were maybe a handful that may have fit into that category, which in 5,000 responses is a pretty small number.
Right.
And so I would say overwhelmingly, we were more likely to see people saying this is like a super safe place, we really like bringing our children here. This feels like a place where I feel like my kids can go after school before I'm able to pick them up.
Right.
And so I'm not saying we didn't hear any in that vein, but that it was by far the minority.
Okay. And then the second question I have pertaining, the other thing that I heard throughout the discussion is the importance of programming, a variety of programming. That programming has to be paid for by some means. Angela, can you comment on the importance of the outside of the county financing of programming from Friends of the Library, what they contribute in terms of where those dollars go, and then third-party grants that come into the library targeting specific assistance in whether it's supporting veterans programming or food education services, things of that nature. How is that important that the library remains proactive in seeking third-party funding?
Very important. Most of our funding, I think 98% of our funding comes from the county. Perry's not here, he is out sick, but 90% comes from the county. We do have grants as well. We do have the Friends of the Library. I don't have their exact numbers. Our free fresh fridges are paid for not through county funds, but through grant funds and donations. And so that's very important to us because we want to make sure that we are meeting a community need, but that we are not encroaching on what we consider to be our library mission. The veterans programs and things, that's a combination of sometimes it is county funds, sometimes it is a partnership grant that's very specific to veterans or to whatever group that we're able to coordinate with. We work very closely with partners like CCSD who usually sign on with our grants so that we have a broader reach, and that just increases the impact that we have with the community. I appreciate y'all so greatly. It is now a little after 11. We are on to our main library. This is not the last you're going to be hearing from Kendra Intergroup because we do have a report coming up, but thank you.
Excellent
We
report.
appreciate y'all.
One other thing to answer Belinda's earlier question about a takeaway is we have a lot of data that we collected from the staff as well. We didn't go over this today because of timing. However, our big takeaway with that is that the staff are highly aligned. When you see the survey results compared to what the staff think patrons want and what patrons want, it was like fully aligned almost in 95% of the cases. So I think that's a good indicator that the staff are listening and paying attention to what people want. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Okay, next up, and y'all please take breaks as you need to. Thank you all so much. We will be having lunch at 12. Right now we have main library updates. We're going to turn it over to Tony and Haley. But yes, main library is going to be taking up a lot of our bandwidth. Haley's like, what? Oh, M's? What are you talking about, M's? Don't worry about it, okay, so with main library, what we're going to be talking about is, this is our largest branch that is part of renovation, and so there's a lot of time and coordination that we're going to be having to sell into this branch. She's doing a fabulous job. She is our project manager. This is like what, our 18th library location. You've been with us 10 years? 9 years. Yeah, 9 years. But she's been with us basically since the beginning of the referendum. And so now with Maine being our last one, our biggest one, and then the opportunities that we have to renovate the space and what we want the space to look like, and also to function, that is going to be huge for us. So I'm going to turn it over to Tony, and
all right, well, happy Friday, everybody. Like Angela said, I am going to talk to you guys about the main library, kind of a big project that we've got going on right now. So for some of you, some of the background information I'm going to share is going to be a repeat. Some of you have probably heard it like about 8 or 10 times at this point, but I do want to quickly run through and talk a little bit about the history of the project, how we got where we are today, and then I'll also talk about our goals and strategies when we were looking at the main library as a whole. I'll show you guys the floor plans that we have to date, and then also we'll talk about our budget strategies for this building, and then exciting news, the temporary locations that we have planned for while maintenance offline. So, quick history of the project in about 35 seconds. So, like Angela said, back in 2014, the county voters approved a $108.5 million referendum, when that included the construction of 5 new libraries, renovation of a space to move the administrative team out of the main library and into a separate building, and then renovation of various levels at all of our other existing facilities that were not slated for replacement. Huge project. So, the way the project was structured is that Maine was always scheduled for the final slot in the renovation schedule, and all of the other preceding projects had a budget line item. Maine was going to be allocated anything that was left over after the other projects were complete. It's an interesting approach to the project. I think at the time everybody felt like the main library was one of the newer branches. The only one that had opened after it was Johns Island. They felt like it was kind of in good shape. Of course, here we are now, 12 years later, and we know the main library needs a little bit more attention. So we started working through all of our other projects, and then way back in 2019, we opened the new Wando Mount Pleasant Library, and this one where we are right now, Baxter-Patrick, with a lot of success. The reason I mentioned Wando and Baxter is that it kind of set us up for what everybody has been expecting subsequently after all of those projects. So we wowed everyone, which is great. You guys are, sitting in one of my favorite projects here. And now everybody expects that from all the other projects. So how do we achieve that on a different scale for everything else? So, like I said, everybody loves us. It's a great problem to have. And at this point for the main library, we have about $8.3 million to allocate to the renovation costs. So that's actual hard construction costs. And then about $11 million for total project costs. And the total project includes that construction and then some of this other stuff that I've got up here. So you have building inspections that you need, design fees, you have to pay your architects, furniture, our AMH equipment. I'll touch on what that entails in a little few slides from now. So there's a lot that's going to go into the project. Also important to note that the numbers up here do include the $1.5 million that the county approved to add to this last year. So you guys had approved that at the last board retreat. Very exciting. Then we pitched it to the county and that was approved. So those numbers include that $1.5 million. And then just for a little bit of comparison, when we renovated the Mount Pleasant Library, it cost $2.2 million in construction costs and $3.4 million in total project costs. Mount Pleasant's about 14,000 square feet. Maine is about 104,000 square feet. So it's about 7 times the size of Mount Pleasant. So just to kind of give you an idea, obviously it's not an apples to apples comparison, but part of what we're facing with the main library is just the sheer scope and scale of the building. It's huge. So we had to take a step back and face the reality on this project is that we didn't have enough with $8.3 million to do everything that we would want to do. We couldn't turn Maine into a Wando. So we had to kind of strategize a little bit, figure out what our priorities were, where we wanted to focus, and hopefully find some other funding sources to toss into the pot. And I'll touch on that. So first, our overall strategy. As you know, Maine has 2 floors. Part of what's a challenge at that building right now is the service model feels really disjointed. The way the spaces are structured, half of the adult collection is upstairs, half of it's downstairs. The children's area is kind of tucked away, which is nice. They have their own space, but it's just very awkward that you have, audio-visual downstairs. Lots of space in the building, but things don't really flow and function very well. So we wanted to try to utilize the luxury of space and make the floor plan work better. So we decided that we wanted to focus our priority on the youth services. What we ended up doing is taking all of those youth services and focusing them onto the first floor, and then all of the adult services will focus up onto the second floor. And I'll share plans with us so you can get a visual in a minute. Then we also wanted to prioritize patron spaces over staff spaces. Staff spaces are still going to get a little bit of a refresh, a little bit of new furniture where it's needed, some paint and carpet and that kind of stuff, but the vast majority of the funding is going to be going into the front-facing patron spaces or services that are going to benefit the patrons from back of house. And then finally, we focused on reusing as much of the existing building and infrastructure where possible. So we tried not to move walls and doors around. We're not moving mechanical systems. Anything really expensive like plumbing, bathrooms, it's all staying where it is. So that really helps a lot. So what does that look like? So this is the first floor, and just to kind of get our nomenclature, we call the ground floor or the garage level. The first floor is when you go up that first flight of stairs, you come out in the lobby, and where we currently have the children's area, that part, and then we call the next floor above that one the second floor, so just so that everybody's on the same page. So, quick disclaimer on these are being shared from our team at Leolio Architects. They are not final plans, so we do just ask, please don't share these with anybody. We are very close to getting everything finalized, but right now they're just not 100% yet. So just have to throw that little disclaimer out there for you. All right, that's it. Talking about our strategy for the spaces. Like I said, we wanted to get all of the youth services down onto one floor. We decided that the children's area actually functions pretty well where it is right now, so we're going to keep that in its existing space. That kind of gives you guys a good reference on what's staying and orients you well with how the building is going to be laid out as we go forward. We also decided that we would keep the community room, meeting rooms in their own respective spaces. Those will get a refresh in the community room, which we currently call the auditorium in particular. We're going to tear the stage out. We'll get all new AV equipment in there so that we've got all high-tech fancy stuff like we have here. And then the big change is that we'll be bringing teens down from the second floor down to the first floor. So we have created a separate area for them. It's kind of top center here on the plan. They will have, like we do at the new facilities, their own room with doors that can close. So when they get a little bit noisy after school, it's not an issue for everybody else in the branch. We are also going to have here a special teen programming room off of their teen suite, we can call it. That will be dedicated just for teen services programming. And we anticipate that that's going to work really well and be very popular at this branch. We do have a lot of teens that come through the main library. Smack in the middle of the plan where it says middle, I wasn't just labeling the middle of the plan, but that is going to be our new middle grades area that we're creating. So that's a lovely space where the children or I should say the youth who are kind of transitioning from the children's area to the teen space, they aren't quite ready for those materials yet. They still have a place to land. And we don't want to lose that continuation in service. So it's really important to have all three of those spaces in the library. The main desk, when you come in, will still be there. We'll have a circulation desk right at the front as well to kind of help orient people through the building. There will be a spot for holds pickup and self-checkout. So if you just want to get in, get out really quick, that will be right there on the first floor. And then some of the back of house spaces, that shaded area that I've labeled Trident, is going to be, continue to be, I should say, used by our partnership with Trident United Way. So they'll be living over there in that space. We are going to update it a little bit with some paint, carpet, and freshen it up so it's kind of stays on brand with the rest of the building. And then there's some of our existing staff space will remain. And then the media hotel. I did talk to a lot of you guys last year about the transition that we are going to be implementing to, Angela mentioned, IMS. And if you guys have any questions on IMS specifically, Haley will be very happy to field those. But basically, we're taking some of the collection, CCPL's collection, and putting it into what we call a media hotel so that it's accessible by staff. Patrons can put holds on these items. They still freely circulate throughout the system, but they're not just taking up real estate in the main library. So one of the biggest problems we have at Maine right now is that we have this huge collection that doesn't necessarily circulate at Maine, but circulates throughout the entire system. So what this will do is allow us to have a nice curated collection at the main library. So when you come here, you're not wandering through these vast canyons of shelving trying to find one or two things, and you have a much nicer browsing experience as a patron. All of those other materials, again, still available for the whole system. Anybody can check them out, put holds on them. It's kind of an on-demand. This IMS system will track what's needed to go out to the different branches, and that can all be sent out. So we'll have circulation staff working back there as well. Part of what's really cool at the main library, adjacent to where it says Media Hotel, just over to the left is sort of this weird black shaded blob. That's our AMH equipment, which stands for Automated Materials Handling. If you've seen it here at this branch, our new branches have it, our support system does as well. It's a fabulous sorting system. It allows staff the opportunity to spend less time on kind of more tedious tasks and just scanning and checking in books, more time with patrons. What's really great about the one at Maine is it's going to run 2 stories. So there's going to be the sorter here at the Media Hotel level, and then another one in the garage level. I say the garage level, but it's an enclosed space. It was our old mail room. And this is going to make it so that our team does not have to bring literally hundreds of crates up and down the elevator every week. It is an incredibly time-consuming and tedious task to do that. So the system will be able to route the books up and down on a conveyor. We're very excited about it. All right, so then upstairs, we have the second floor. A lot of it is going to be staying the same in that we're not creating a lot of new spaces up here, except we are going to try and add some study and small meeting rooms. Those spaces are in such high demand at all of our new buildings. We wanted to try and incorporate those at the main library if we could. So we're hoping that those will be able to stay in on our budget there right along the Calhoun Street side. Of course, we have the South Carolina room and archive. Those are going to be staying in their existing locations. We are going to be expanding the back of house staff area a little bit. We do need a little more space for our staff over at the main library. They're getting squashed in there. We are working on this part of the plan in particular with our architects because it creates this weird little corner space that we don't love. It's a little hard for staff to manage that there at the lower left, but we do need to keep that exit stair open and accessible for patrons. So we're working on that part of it. And then what we're showing right now for this large open area is very representational. I'm going to be working with our collections team to figure out the best layout for the shelving and how we want to have the collection. Where do we want AV? Where do we want, nonfiction, fiction, all of that good stuff. And then how do we place from there, the rest of our services, our computers, some lounge furniture, periodicals, all of those kinds of things. So we're working on what that is going to look like. But as you can see, second floor, staying pretty open and hopefully very inviting. All right. So I did want to touch on really quick the budget breakdown and how we're going to make all of this work. So like I mentioned, we have the $11.1 million from the referendum fund that includes that 1.5 contribution from Charleston County. The county is also going to be contributing quite a significant amount to this project, $6 million plus. I'll explain the plus here in a second. The county has what are called preservation funds, and those can be used for ongoing building maintenance projects, things like a roof replacement or facilities upgrades, the kind of stuff that just needs to happen, routine building maintenance, right? So for our project here at the main library, they are contributing to help us with roof replacement, which actually started last week and is coming along well. We wanted to get that done ahead of time before starting the project so we could kind of get them in and out. And they're also going to be paying to upgrade the elevators as well as upgrade the restrooms, and I don't want to miss anything else on here, replace the exterior windows. And then the reason why there's a $6 million plus is because there's one more project that we're working on. We don't have costs associated with that yet, and that is the facade improvements. You guys know we had to do some structural assessments on the exterior facade. Those are still underway. We're working on if we're going to need to replace a lot of windowsills out there and what that might look like. So that's why that's a $6 million plus. The county has also found an energy savings contract grant that we're really excited about. That's going to help us replace the HVAC system, much needed improvement at Maine, so we're looking forward to that. And then our IT team here at CCPL is working with a program called E-Rate, and that is going to pay for a lot of our network equipment and structured cabling, which is everything that all of the internet cabling has to run through in the ceilings and floors. We don't have a final price on that yet. The project's actually going to be going out to bid here in about the next month or two, but we're expecting literal hundreds of thousands of dollars from that contribution as well. So we've kind of pieced all this together, and we're pretty excited about all of that. So I do want to pause here. I'm going to talk about the temporary spaces next, but I know I kind of threw a lot of information at you guys. So do you have any questions on this first part?
So it's a $20 million project?
Yes.
And we had $6 million as of 18 months ago, maximum, correct?
Yeah, for construction. Yep, it was about 6.3. 6.1, I think, yeah.
And the temporary relocation of Maine to the Longshoremen's Building, that funding is not part of this.
All separate. All right, perfect segue into our temporary relocation projects. So obviously Maine, it's a huge branch. It's our central location downtown. We were struggling with what we were going to do being offline for a considerable amount of time. The project isn't going to take a month or two, and we were worried about continuation of services while we were offline. So we, in the past year, were able to figure this out. Kudos to the people who made all this happen behind the scenes. So for the first one I'm going to tell you guys about is Camp Road, which if you've been around the county for a little while, you might remember that 1248 Camp Road actually used to be a library in CCPL system before we built this one. So I will share some pictures of that one in a minute, and that is where we're going to move the South Carolina room and a partial portion of our archive over there as well. That facility will be available by appointment. but it will be staffed full-time. And then the ILA, or the International Longshoremen's Association building, which is on Morrison Drive. We're very excited about it because we actually were able to find space on the peninsula. We're going to have staff and patron areas in that space, so the public will be welcome there. We don't have operating hours yet, but it's not going to be appointment. People will be able to come and go when the library is open. So we'll start out with Camp Road, just up the street here on your way out today if you want to take a drive on by. So like I said, this used to be our James Island Library, and then we opened the Baxter-Patrick branch, and then it spent a little bit of time for a little while as the James Island Cultural Center. And the picture that I snapped here from Google Images still shows the James Island Cultural Center, but that's what the building looks like. We'll be putting our own signage out there, I assume. Well, maybe not, because it's by appointment. We'll have to work on that one. But that's the location down there on Camp Road. It's a nice building, actually. It was too small for our library, but it's going to be perfect for the South Carolina room. There are going to be a few adjustments that we do need to make to the exterior. They've put up a fence. I say they, that would be the neighboring property owner. They've put up a fence along the sidewalk edge here, so we don't have access to that parking lot. So the county is going to be paving some spaces out front so that there's a safe place for everybody to park, and then, you know, there's a sidewalk to get into the building. It makes it a little bit more accessible. And then you don't need to back out onto Camp Road. The inside of the building, like I said, it's actually in pretty nice shape. There's, you know, some cleaning and ceiling tile replacement and, you know, minimal stuff that needs to happen in there. But we're excited to have this for the South Carolina room. It's open. There's a decent amount of space in there. And like I said, we'll be able to bring some of the archive items over. Some of them are going to be going into archival storage, but there were some that our team felt was important to still have accessible to the public. And we're working on the plans right now for exactly what the layout's going to look like inside the space. But we're pretty excited about this one. And like I said, this one will be by appointment. And then we have the ILA building, like I said, up here on Morrison Drive. If you're not familiar when we're saying the ILA building, you might be familiar with the one, or the fact that it's this building with the Oculus next to it, which happens to be very similar to our feature at Wando. Although theirs is just a boring staircase, not a fun reading area, but it's okay. So it's a huge space. We're really excited about this. It's got plenty of parking, huge luxury on the peninsula. It's going to offer basically like a mini Maine is kind of what we're calling it for now. For those of you guys that were on board when we were renovating, or building the new Keith Summey branch, when we closed Cooper River, we created a small temporary Cooper River location. We're going to be doing essentially the same thing here, just on a much larger scale. So we'll still have, you know, children's, adults, teen services, collection, all of that people can come and browse and check that out. We'll have some public computers available. We're kind of workshopping on what programming might look like, but we're really excited to have this. So what does it look like on the inside? These are the developers' plans that I'm sharing. So, you know, some of the wording and stuff on here, this was the best that we've got for right now. But we're going to have access to meeting assembly 2, and then meeting assembly 1, and then some space that I'll show you on the next slide as well. The meeting small in the dark blue and the gym and locker are occupied by the building owner, so they're going to stay there. And then office 1 and office 2, excuse me, down here at the bottom of this plan, those are currently being leased by a pest control company and a contractor. I've met a couple of the gentlemen that work there. They seem very friendly. They are excited that the library is going to be coming in, so it's always nice to have nice neighbors.
So that light green area connecting Assembly 1 and Assembly 2?
That is an outdoor covered kind of like patio sort of space. We technically have access to it, but we're not going to open that part for patrons. We feel like that would just be very, very difficult to manage. And then also, of course, the building owner will be bringing, you know, their stuff and their staff in and out those doors.
So if someone needs to leave from Assembly 1 to get to Assembly 2, how do they?
So, yeah, and I can touch base on this in a second, but I'll get into this in a second. Assembly 1 is just going to be staff only. Assembly 2 is going to be for the public. But our staff, if they want some fresh air, can go through the terrace outside. Or this gray bar, that's an open hallway for anybody to access between the gym and locker and meeting small, and then the office 1 and 2. So that's all covered interior space that you can walk through down there. So to give you guys an idea on what it looks like inside, so this is, let me make sure I get this right. This is the meeting assembly 2 side. It's a very large open space. To give you kind of a little bit of perspective, it's between the size of Poe and Dart in that large open area. So this is where we intend to put some stacks of shelving in there, so we have a collection. We'll get some public computers, of course, service points as well. Those doors that you can see along here on the left side of the image, we can have a couple of staff offices in there so that staff can keep an eye on things. And then this image here on the lower right, this is the hallway leading into that space. It's actually quite wide, so we're thinking maybe we can have some holds pick up there and another service point. Again, this is still all in development, but kind of what we're conceptualizing. And then the doors at the end of the hallway are the public restrooms. Those are easily accessible. So that will give you that area. And then on the other side, no, I can't remember the names. Meeting Assembly 1. Okay, this is Meeting Assembly 1. And this is another very large open space. It's a little more commercial or industrial than the other one. It's got a tile floor, no beautiful ceiling tiles. Actually still has all the ILA banners and things up there. We are going to be using this as the media hotel. Once Maine goes offline, we'll be able to keep stacks and stacks of materials in here so that we don't have to put a lot of CCPL's collection offline while we're closed. So we're very excited about this. But this will be a staff-only space. And then there are some spaces for offices back there. It's like an old ticketing counter. And yeah, we can tuck some staff back there as well. Then up on the second floor, so if you go up the stairs, this is above where the other tenant spaces were on the first floor. We're also going to be leasing what they are calling Office 3 here. And it is pretty much just that, it's an office suite. So we're figuring we'll have staff up here. Again, we don't have all of this worked out yet, exactly who's gonna go where, but that's our plan for this, this space. And then of course there's access for restrooms as well. And then a few images of what that looks like on the inside. It's pretty typical 1990s office space. So, you know, there's some cabinetry and things in there. We'll be bringing over a lot of our own furniture. There's a couple storage rooms, and there is an IT closet up there. Of course, we won't be using their existing infrastructure. We'll be rewiring, but it's nice to have all of those spaces set up already. So that is pretty much what I had for you guys today. I don't know if you have any questions. I'm happy to talk through anything for the first half of the presentation or anything on the temporary spaces.
So what's the timeline?
I'm going to let Angela answer the timeline question.
Our timeline that we have been saying publicly is that we do believe we will be going offline in fall and that we will be opening our temporary locations in fall of this year. We don't have an exact date. We're being very careful how we quantify that because we want to make sure that when we tell the public we're ready to open or close that those are exact dates. But yeah, we're saying fall 2026.
And so what happens? Do you close the main building and then over the weekend drive everything to the, I mean, how do you do all
Well,
this?
I have signed all of y'all up for rotating shifts to help us move boxes. I hope you have trucks. No. That is something that we've been preparing for in all seriousness, and that's part of the coordination. Kudos to John, kudos to Haley, kudos to Tony. They have been having meetings about interior coordination. We will be, for the South Carolina room, we are going to be paying for a company called Iron Mountain, and they are known for special preservation for sensitive materials. And so right now what's happening is the South Carolina room staff are looking at what can they feasibly take, with Tony's help, into fitting into the temporary location, what needs to be stored into Iron Mountain. When it is stored with Iron Mountain, I believe that's in North Carolina, we won't have access to those materials for that time. So these are the, excuse me, the temperature controlled items, the things that, you know, we don't have an archival space at the temporary location. So those are, you know, sensitive items, we want to make sure that they're taken care of, and then anything else that we won't be able to put in our location. So that will be one piece. We also are hiring professional movers to help come in and to, after we have weeded and cleared out everything that we don't want, then we're going to have professional movers come in and box up our books, our items, our computers, and everything else. And then they will be moving it to the different locations. We think, it will take a few days, honestly, to move from main library over to our temporary location. And so we would close to the public and be very clear about here's the closure date to the public, and then here's the opening date for our new location. While we are in the new temporary location, there will be a few staff that are left over that are helping with, final closure, anything else that we need to clean out the building, because as Tony can attest, once we turn over the keys to the building to our construction company, we don't have access to the building anymore. And so we want to be very clear that everything that we have removed from the building is the things we want to preserve, and anything left in there we aren't going to have access to anymore. And so, yes, several days to move into our temporary location for the South Carolina room, several days, probably 3, 4, 5 days to move from main library into our new location.
What I'd like to ask is that you're so good and your team's so good, I'm sure you've already thought of all this, but we need to let the public know all about this.
Oh, absolutely.
Because people are asking me what plans are. And so I hope we'll have several information sessions about, this was the first time I realized that the South Carolina room was going to have its own place, and that's terrific.
And that's a new emergent. So who is the new council member for that district in Charleston? He's reached out to me. I'm blanking on his name.
Okay.
Is that right? Yeah. Yeah. So he reached his office. He reached out to me and said, I would love to have community sessions. When he wanted to have them immediately, I was like, we will have them. We're not quite ready yet. So we're going to be working. I'll be working with Rob Weirman, because that's his district and council. I'll be working with City of Charleston. We will have sessions probably at main library, but then out and around the community as well.
That sounds great.
Yes. And then, what we've learned through the Riley Center is that we need to communicate on many, many different platforms, many, many different levels. We do have, and we want to use this strategically, people who sign up and they say that main library is their home location. So anytime you get a library card, you say, Maine is my home location, or Baxter-Patrick is my home location. That puts you as part of an aggregated email list so that we can send targeted emails for there. So we would send targeted emails to main library patrons who people have designated themselves as main library patrons. We would start there. We can also text people. There's a lot of things we can do that we haven't used before because we don't want to be invasive, but people have opted in for things like email and texting, and so that's something that we're going to be looking at as we move forward and inform the community.
Because a lot of people are under the impression that the library will be closed with no available arrangements made.
Well, and remember, this is all very new. This only emerged within the last month, really. Kudos to Haley. Haley. When he came on board, his channel is collections and delivery and AMH and everything else, but also facilities. And so he hired a facilities manager, but then I tasked him with, can you please look around in the community and find anything on the peninsula that we can use as a temporary location? Months he looked. It was looking pretty bleak for a while because we couldn't find anything, or what we did find was literally all over the peninsula, and we were worried about that. But the ILA became available. We have been prepping for this for a while fiscally, and Perry's not here, but he can tell you that every year we knew that we were going to have rent of some kind for Maine, and so this does not have an operational impact. We have been planning for it. We have not had to ask for additional funding. This is not referendum funding, and so we're ready. And so the ILA will be our temporary location. There's still a lot of steps before we're ready to talk to the public because we're going to be going offline in the fall. We are wanting to let people know in late spring, early summer that this is the plan for it. We want to have more clear deadlines, more clear dates, and those are just sort of up in the air right now about when we can feasibly move and be ready to operate.
Will we have signage going up at the ILA building
Yes.
indicating?
Yes, Tony, you want to talk about signage at the ILA building? What are we allowed to do there?
Honestly, I
Coming
don't know
soon.
yet. Yes, so I don't want to say anything officially, but I do know that the other tenants who are occupying space do have signage up on exterior monument signs, so I would imagine that they would permit us to do the same thing. And like Angela said, just lots of getting the word out on, okay, here's where our parking's going to be and all of that, so.
Alyssa, Graham, you had a question?
And signage on the interior as well, sorry not to cut you guys off, but we'll have lots of directional signage so people know where they can go in the building as well.
May I ask, and Tony, thank you for the comprehensive presentation. Just out of curiosity, if the Camp Road location is to be staffed full time, is there a reason that it's by appointment only? And also, how will the appointment process look like?
So there are some limitations to access to the building. We don't have a lot of parking, and there's businesses there that have stressed that they do not want library patrons parking where the businesses are, so that they have been very clear with county and with the city as well that we are not allowed to park there, so we have limited parking. We are working on an appointment process. The South Carolina room has a lot of close relationships with people who do research, but then we will probably have something on our website as well as potentially a special web page where you can make appointments. We talked at length with the South Carolina room about what type of appointments do people do. A lot of them are virtual, honestly. Like they're calling and they're scanning items or they're helping with virtual work. So the in-person, for example, the College of Charleston likes to bring students. We can accommodate that if we know in advance and if they're able to, for example, carpool or things like that. We have very limited parking, unfortunately, and then when we're going to arrange a tour for the board so that y'all can see, there's like, what do we have, like 8 parking spaces, if that, and it's actually grass at the moment.
Yeah, it's grass right now, and a very weird little part where they put asphalt down. So I think you can fit about 3 or 4 cars on the asphalt. They're going to expand that to cover more of the grass area with parking.
Yes.
So I think the plan is 7 or 8 spaces.
Yeah, I was told 8. We're hoping for 8. And so that's something that we're going to be working with very closely with the community. And you're right, that is a little frustrating that we can't accommodate as many people as we would when they were in Main Library, but because of limitations of the center and that the businesses have said they do not want library parking there, we have to abide by that.
I was just wondering about the expense items, storage at the North Carolina, renting the places, materials you might need to hold books or whatever.
Are you wanting numbers?
Yeah, I wondered, is there a line item in the budget perhaps? 'Cause
how about this, when we have our board meeting this month, I can have Perry give an update.
Okay.
As he's not here, I don't want to misquote him.
Okay, no problem, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to go back on that South Carolina history room because those folks are diehard folks.
Yes.
And so when we say that it's not open to the public, I still can call Monday at 11 o'clock
Yes.
and someone will answer that telephone.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. We will have a robust telephone presence, online presence. We will accommodate people as we can for appointments. Because the entire building, will have our collection in there also, we have to be thoughtful about, how much access we give to the public. In the current South Carolina room, you walk in and the more sensitive items are, behind the scenes. We're going to be storing our most sensitive ones, but then there's some that they're going to have right there just on the floor. And so they want to make sure that when someone comes in, there's a 1-to-1 ratio, things like that, which is typically what research is. It's, small groups of people. And so they want to make sure that they can accommodate that.
And then, Angela, do you have a rough idea, a plan or a rough idea of how long this renovation is going to take?
How long do we think it's going to be?
Right now, we're saying, to be safe, plan on Main being closed for 2 years. I don't expect it's going to take that long, and our contractor has a very optimistic view on how long it's going to take. But we are saying 2 years to everybody just so that that's kind of our safe space. That's where we feel good existing right now.
Yeah.
Tried United Way's area in the main building. Are they rehabbing that? Or are we rehabbing that?
We are rehabbing that. It is going to be very minimal. So we are going to be doing paint, carpet, and ceiling replacement in there, similar to what we'll be doing throughout the rest of the building. They'll be putting all of their own furnishings. They will be doing any upgrades to infrastructure like electrical or data that they would want. We felt that it was important to maintain consistency through the whole building and not have one area that had a completely different look and feel to it.
Are they using our contractor or are they using someone else?
We haven't gotten that far with them yet, honestly. So our contractor will be doing the like paint and carpet in that whole area. Any infrastructure upgrades, we haven't discussed that with them yet. That will come very much further in the project. And honestly, I'm not sure if they're even going to consider doing any of them at this time. But likely we would recommend that they would use a preferred vendor who we usually work with.
My concern is time and conflict. If they use different contractors, that's going to require coordination, it's going to require a whole bunch of other stuff, that quite frankly could cause a later reopening than we want.
Absolutely, and I will say that in all of the work we've done so far with Trident, we have required that everything comes through me as well as their project manager. So it's, you know, even if it was another contractor, it kind of fall under me as well. So
Running a little red flag at the flagpole.
absolutely, I appreciate it.
That one section behind the Trident, the cross-hatched section, that is also intended to be used by Trident, and right now it's one big, where Friends used to have their book queuing. What are their intended uses of that section?
So my understanding, and Angela, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, as you guys know, Trident is currently occupying the, I'll just call it solid gray area. And I believe that the plan when we reopen is that they are going to continue to operate in the solid gray area. They are, however, leasing the solid gray and hatched area from us, and they have plans for expanding into the hatched gray area at some point.
Yes. I'm going to be inviting DJ Harmon, who is the executive director of Trident United Way, to give a presentation to the board about the current beta test that we have running, but then also the plans that we have. We also are going to be able to, because we will have a little bit of space at Isle 8, we're going to be bringing Trident United Way with us. We don't know what that looks like just yet, but they will have a touchdown location because they have made some wonderful connections in the community with services. We want to continue that. We continue it part of our pilot. And so we're going to continue that whenever we have the ILA. Library services will be the focal point, but we know that that is something that our community has responded well to, and we want to continue this connection. So I'm not sure what month he will be here, but I'm working on getting him on the agenda.
Anything else? Everybody's hungry again. Great, well, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, well, yes, so we can go ahead and start breaking for lunch. Amanda, how are you doing lunch? Okay, looks like there are our box lunches here. They have our names on it. Minutes late. Welcome, State Library. I'm going to have y'all introduce yourselves. Lisa Aiken is the State Librarian. She's out on leave, but State Library's office has sent some wonderful staff members that we interface with regularly. I am so happy to host them. They are going to talk about things like state aid and the proviso. We do have time on the agenda for questions, I'm sure, so if it's okay, I'm just going to actually have y'all come on up here and
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Yates. I'm the Deputy Director here at the South Carolina State Library. And as Angela said, we're here to talk a little bit about state aid and proviso requirements. And we appreciate you having us for lunch. This is Brianne Smith. She's the Associate Deputy Director. She works a lot with the state aid disbursements and the process. To we're going to talk a little bit about that.
I have a hard time hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Use the
And we'll
microphone.
answer your questions. Oh, you got one? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And we'll answer any questions that you have as we finish.
All right, we'll just go ahead and get started. This is just a very basic presentation and overview of state aid and how it works. So the South Carolina State Library is required by statute to administer state support for public libraries and ensure that the funds are spent within the fiscal year and follow all compliance rules. And these just cite some of the rules that mention specifically state aid. If you have questions at the end, I'll be glad to answer questions specifically about these code sections. So state aid documents. So in order for public libraries to receive their state aid funding, they must submit the following documents. So the first is a compliance certification. So this just certifies that you comply with all current state laws regarding state aid. The maintenance of efforts statement, this is something that's provided by the county. This just ensures that they are keeping minimum funding for the library, that it doesn't decrease over the years. The state aid agreement and library budget, this just outlines the budget for the new fiscal year. There are certain parameters that the budget has to fit into, certain percentages, and so that's what this form addresses. As well as the library or county audit. So this is for the second preceding fiscal year, and this just corroborates what is on the maintenance of effort statement, just to ensure that the funding is staying the same, it's not decreasing. As a result of Proviso 27.1, we have added the collection development funding certification 1 and 2. And so the proviso, it made some changes to our state aid. Now we issue the payments in 2 payments, which is why there are 2 forms. So in order to receive the first payment, you must submit all the documentation and the collection development form number 1, and then to receive the second allotment, you have to send in the second form, the certification form number 2. And the proviso, this is the proviso as it reads. Specifically, it says prior to receiving each of these fund allocations, county libraries must certify to the state library and have an adopted policy in place that their county libraries do not offer any books or materials that appeal to the prurient interests of children under the age of 17 in children's, youth, or teen book sections of libraries, and are only made available with explicit parental consent. And so the new form that I mentioned as a result of Proviso 27.1 is the collection development funding certification. And so this form certifies that county libraries meet all of the legislation related to state aid. This would just include how you can spend the funding, things like that. Have library board approved policies related to collection development. They must have a request for reconsideration form, a policy that clearly identifies the age at which a child can obtain a library card without parental consent, and they must follow the professional standards when selecting and organizing materials in the collection. And so the professional standards referenced here are actually in the public library standards, which is published by the state library. And I can, if you're interested in viewing that, I can provide that, a link for that. So I know there were some questions about the comprehensive review procedure. And just to clarify, we have not received anything from any county delegation, any legislative delegation regarding state aid. So no county in the state has reached out to us thus far regarding the comprehensive review. But if a comprehensive review is requested by the local legislative delegation related to compliance with the proviso, then the state library is going to review the following documents, which most of them are documents that you would submit for state aid. The compliance certification, maintenance of efforts statement, state aid agreement and library budget form, the library county audit, the collection certifications, collection development policy, request for reconsideration form, policy related to library card age without parental consent, and then the library card application.
Excuse me.
Sure.
A local delegation can request a comprehensive review,
Yes, sir, it's the legislative delegation for the county.
not an individual legislator or senator, correct?
Correct. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
The entire legislative delegation would have to take up the matter
Thank you.
for us to have a comprehensive review. And so this is just a continuation of the comprehensive review procedure. So if the compliance is questioned, it'll be evaluated based on South Carolina Code of Laws 60-1-80, which speaks to the scope of authority of the South Carolina State Library, and 49-9-35, 36, and 37, which lists the responsibilities of the Public Library Board of Trustees, and also the South Carolina Code of Regulations, Volume 26, Chapter 75, which specifically mentions state aid. Upon completion of a review, a determination will be sent to the legislative delegation, the director of the public library, and the public library board chair. And as I mentioned, we have not had to do this yet because we have not received any requests for a comprehensive review.
You mean from around the state of South Carolina?
Correct.
So there've been none?
None. And so if the review does find that the county library is not in compliance, we would immediately, if the library has not received funding yet, we would immediately withhold all funding. If they have received part of it, we would suspend the remaining funding, and then we would reinstate the funds once it's determined that they are meeting the proviso. And that's it. That is the basic rundown of how it works. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
These submissions come in 2 cycles. Are there deadlines with them, or could one perhaps come, if they were late filing, you could file it 30 days later for the second one, or you have certain deadlines on how you submit?
We do. It's kind of an open deadline. It's not a hard deadline. So if you were to submit it later, we would still send your money in. I know there's an issue for the second payment. It mentions the library and county audits, and some libraries they don't receive the county audit until later in the year, and that's why.
So there could be 2 submitted close together?
That's possible.
It's possible.
Yes.
And if the a library was to be found in violation, do you claw back anything retroactive, or is this in going forward types of payments?
So if they were in compliance, it would mean that they were in compliance if they were to receive the first allotment. So we would not request that funding back. If it was found that they were not in compliance at the time that the second payment were due, we would withhold that.
And the audit that's mentioned in the first slide, what is that audit?
So I listed library and county audit. Some libraries do their own audit. Some libraries are with the county and their audit information is within the county audit. So that is just to make sure that the information on the maintenance of effort form that's completed by the county administrator is correct. It asks for, so the library audit that we ask for is for the second preceding fiscal year, and that is the information that's on the MOE. So we just ask for that to make sure.
So you're talking about financial audit?
Yes, to make sure that it's accurate.
And then if you were to end up needing to do a review process, what's involved in the review process?
We would check that those forms that I listed, we would check and ensure that the library has those forms.
So they submitted the forms, but something needs to be reviewed. How do you execute that review? What do you actually do? I know it hasn't happened at this point, but I'm just curious.
So, like you mentioned, on this, most of these are forms that already have to be submitted for state aid, but we would also check their collection development policy to make sure that that's
So
compliant.
you're just checking off boxes that all these things are met. You're not necessarily going into the library physically and checking anything.
No, that's not within our authority at the state library.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming down from Columbia. you are Mr. Yates, if I'm not mistaken, and ma'am, I didn't catch your name.
Breanne Smith?
Breanne Smith.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong. The state aid funding, the state library as a pass-through entity doesn't actually put hands on the funding. It's dispersed from the comptroller general to the county county treasurer, and my understanding is that's the way that the funds are dispersed. Is that also your understanding?
So we do actually receive the funding and then we would disperse it out to the libraries.
Okay. And
So it is pass-through funding, but we do receive it, and then it just passes through our account into theirs, once
And-
it's dispersed.
So the funds are deposited into a bank account belonging to the state library. And from there, they are dispersed to the individual county library systems.
Yes.
And those funds that you received were released by the state treasurer's office?
Yes, the comptroller general.
The comptroller general, excuse me. Thank you. And my second question relates to a press release from the state library that does not seem to have a date, but it's accessible on your website. I think you are listed, Ms. Smith, as the for further information contact, but it reads, and I'm quoting, that the changes to Proviso 27.1 are vague, subjective, and outside the scope of the governing legislation related to the duties of the state library. Can you explain to me what you mean by that? And if that is still the position of the state library, that Proviso 27.1 is vague and subjective to the point of not being able to be enforced by your organization?
So it has changed, the proviso has changed slightly since the time that that press release was written. I think that we have a good process in place to ensure that county libraries are compliant. And I think the issue as far as our authority has to do more with collection development. We do not make collection development decisions for county libraries.
So would it be fair to say that the state library does not consider it to be vague and subjective and capable of enforcement?
I think that we are capable of enforcing it, yes. I think that we have worked out a system that seems to work since we have not received any request for review.
Thank you. I appreciate your clarifications, and I would respectfully submit that perhaps the press release should be removed from the website. Thank you.
We have a response, Mr. Yates, that you wrote to Attorney General Dan Wilson.
Yes, we asked that we provide a confirmation of the compliance for the.
Can you step in front of the microphone for your answers?
Sorry.
Yes, he had requested, had sent a letter and requested that we provide official confirmation that the Charleston County Public Library was in compliance, so I sent that to him.
And so he wrote you.
I believe he
I
addressed.
mean, he wrote the state library, and we don't have a copy of that letter. At least I didn't see it in my stuff.
The Attorney General released a press release on his website. I'm happy to forward that to the full board.
And that's in response to Graham's thing?
It was in response to media attention, yes.
Okay.
And I
I'd like to
believe,
have a copy.
I'm sure,
But
yes,
you
I
said
can.
it was on his website.
It's on his website. It was a press release that he released today's Friday. It was earlier, I want to say it was released on Wednesday, perhaps?
February
If that was,
4th.
is that correct, Graham? If you go, I will not burden y'all with going to the website. I'm happy to forward that
Okay,
to,
I would like-
yeah. I also can forward to the trustees. I have personally responded to Nancy Mace's office. I have sent a letter to IMLS. We sent a letter to Attorney General Wilson. I have not responded to the Lieutenant Governor because we have not received an actual letter. I know there's a Facebook post, but because it's just a Facebook post, we want to make sure that we are responding to actual correspondence. Nancy may send in a letter, so we want to make sure that we respond to that. Should we receive a letter, and it could be there is one in the mail, I just haven't received yet. If I receive one, I'm happy to respond.
And each of those letters CC'd the board. We as a board have not seen copies of those.
Yes, and so we will make sure. So I was not sure if they were looking for ways to communicate with you, and so it was a very, very busy week. I'm very happy to forward those to the
That
board.
Lieutenant Governor letter is, Grant, is that the letter that you referred to as the Pam letter, I believe?
Yes, that was from Pamela Abbott.
Oh, okay.
who is our lieutenant governor.
And so,
Perhaps the next governor.
so I'm afraid that I have not received a formal letter from the Lieutenant Governor. As I said, all that I'm aware of is that there was a Facebook post. So I'm very happy to respond to anything formal.
Grant, one second. You are advocating on her behalf, running for, are you associated with her campaign?
I'm not.
You're not? No. Okay, thank you.
I saw the other letters, but I did not see the letter that the attorney wrote.
And my apologies,
No,
folks.
that's okay.
Yeah, I will happily send. How about this? I will, and forgive me if I'm double posted, I will resend everything that I have sent so that the full board can see and review. Thank you.
In reference to the Attorney General's letter, at the end of the letter it says, to ensure compliance with 27.1 moving forward, I'll be sending a copy of this letter to Lisa Aiken, Director of the State Library. I would also ask that she provide formal confirmation that the above referenced situation has been appropriately resolved. Additionally, I will be copying the local legislative delegation for informational purposes to determine if further action is necessary. So I did respond to his letter confirming that Charleston County was in compliance.
Were there additional questions for the State Library?
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate your help. Thank you.
All right. There you go. We did. Okay, wonderful. My annual review process is through Timeline. Renee would have actually been here, but she had a personal thing, and so this is wonderful type of work we're gonna, y'all gonna do some minute. So if you have questions, please relay them to Renee so that she can actually answer them. They're just gonna talk through the timeline right here. So ladies, why don't you introduce yourself? We have a fabulous HR team.
I'm Diana Reinger, I'm the benefits manager for the library. I've been here about 9 years.
And I'm Alana Cadell, I'm the benefits specialist for the library, and I've been here for 3 years.
So we were
Could y'all
just,
speak in the microphone?
oh, I apologize.
Yeah.
So Alana has the performance evaluations that she's going to hand out. And these are for the 2025 review. So just, I know there's a couple of new board members. So they would just be for those who were here in 2025 for the full year to observe Angela's work. Okay, so Renee said that you're going to send you're going to send summaries to her, and she's going to copy and paste and whatever you send to her and put it right into the evaluation. It's going to have your name and it's going to have your summary in there. She said to call her if you need help, just like last year. She said some called and she just typed in what you said or the ratings or whatever. She'll be happy to help you. And she said they need to be finished by March 26th at that board meeting. So they need to be prepared by that. I can answer, Alana, and I can answer some questions about timeline and whatnot. So if you have any questions.
Is it better to complete these sooner rather than later, i.e. February 25th or March 25th?
By that time.
We want folks to complete these as soon as possible.
Yeah, and submit them to, I guess, Renee at the next board, at the board meeting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she wants them by the board meeting in March. So whether you scan her a copy or you call her or you hand her a copy at that next board meeting, just any way you can transmit that to her.
Perfect.
Yeah, so after we leave today, Amanda's going to send out an email to all of you with the Excel format version of this. So if you prefer to complete it online and just send her that file, you can also do that as well, send it to Renee.
But Amanda's going to send that out. It's going to have details about the formulas in the Excel sheet that pulls from like the calculation page to the spread page.
And like I said before, that if any of you don't feel comfortable filling out this form, give Renee a call and she will do it on your behalf while talking to you on the phone. And she did that last year for some folks. Anything else?
Okay.
That's it.
That's
Thank
it.
you.
Awesome. Wonderful.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you. Yes, we do have time for questions. Alyssa, did you have a couple?
Yeah, I do. We have had a liaison to the county party, and I believe it's been replaced. It's now, is it Brantley Moody?
It's Brantley Moody, yes.
I'm sorry, our liaison to the county council is now Brantley Moody, and I know in the past we haven't had good turnout from our liaison, and I think a lot of it's due to the conflict that our fourth Thursdays is often a county council meeting. Is there something that can be done to engage or work with how we engage with our liaison?
So I have a cordial relationship with Councilman Moody. He said that he's able to attend quite a few of the meetings. This year, I think only we looked at it, 2 meetings actually conflict with county council. So my recommendation is that let's keep the calendar intact for this year. But then what I would like to, if the board is amenable to it, perhaps in October, when we're looking at the calendar for next year, we might want to look at moving the board meetings from a Thursday to perhaps a Monday or Wednesday. We don't have to think about it right now. We don't, that's something that would be helpful because we can only program up to a certain point with meetings when it comes to the county council. It's always on Tuesday, always on Thursday. So even if we know in advance, we only know until like mid-year. So my recommendation would be if we could think through, does it work for us to move it to like a Monday night or Wednesday night? Tuesday, we would have the same issue at some point.
Nobody wants to come on a Friday night.
No one's going to come on Friday. And Saturdays are off the day, So we don't, this is not anything that the board, and this will be your call as board members, but I will be bringing it later in the year, and I think it's worth sort of discussion.
It's pointless to have a liaison if they're not
here. But Councilman Moody said that he was happy to come. He might be able to come to this. He also has a full-time job.
Right.
And so I know that sometimes it's not council business, but he might have other obligations. And so he's well aware. He is
He did mention that he will be watching, now that we're videotaping meetings.
Cool.
He'll be dropping in on that and watching and catching up. I encouraged him that if he did, as a result of watching a meeting, if he had questions, to get in touch with Angela or the chair, whoever that is, and follow up that way. But that's where we're at.
Yeah, good question.
And then I noticed regarding the volumes that got removed, that they were able to be removed specifically from the digital Hoopla program. Can you go in and like click off a title? I mean, it doesn't just. So how are they able to disable those 3 books?
So they are a third-party vendor, and they have an entirely separate IT department. So whenever we move up a book or withdraw a book, we have to, we can only control the physical book. And that's something that's just part of the agreement. So to withdraw a book entirely, we can withdraw physical copies. And then I should also mention, I do believe 1 copy of the title someone has checked out currently. So what that means is that it's off of our catalog, but someone is floating out there somewhere. We're never going to charge them for it. They can keep it, they just don't know that. And they might, if they bring it back in, then we would just withdraw it. So physical copies we can do with that quite easily. The digital copies through Hoopla, we have to work with the vendor. So it was quite an ordeal. It was quite an ordeal. Haley's team originally was working with them, and it's not just like they could just click it off Alyssa, because they are a huge company and we are one of many libraries and everything else that they do. So it took me escalating the call to the manager, and this was like, that was the 29th, I believe. By the 30th, they were able to remove everything, and at first they froze access. It had to go in stages. The covers were still there, but you couldn't access it, but the covers were there, so it looked like it was still in the collection, it wasn't. And then they were able to fully remove everything, but they had to put in an IT ticket, much like we had to put in IT tickets with our IT department, and so there's just several levels with that.
So were they able to tailor that just to CCPL, or is that gone from other subscribers?
That's just CCPL.
Okay.
We have no control what happens with other institutions.
And I know this is probably a topic for another day because it's probably going to be lengthy, but I mentioned at one of the meetings about AI, and I'm just interested in the impact of...
From a agenda standpoint, I'm not quite sure what it is that you were asking because it's more philosophical and there's not actually an agenda item there.
I'm not even sure if I can articulate what I'm trying to ask, but we all know that AI is playing a bigger role in our lives.
Sure.
And I would think that the library wants to encourage one's own mental processes and figuring things out and not relying on computers to formulate opinions and thought or whatever. So it seems like it would be contrary to a library's mission. And I'm just wondering, as we move ahead, what role do you see AI, how do you see it impacting, a public library system, specifically our public library system?
That is very philosophical. I can say that AI is everywhere and that we cannot control if the patrons use or don't use it. Because the patrons use it, we are
Are you using it to perhaps parse through books or source things, or is the library using it in any particular role?
We use it in all different areas. I mean, you can pull it up on Google and the AI does a summary. In our databases now, I think there is an AI summary and things, and then with IMS that we're going to be using, which is, what is it, IMS? Intelligent Materials Management System. IMS has a heavy AI component, which does look at books, aggregate things. We don't have that system yet, but we will later on. What I would suggest, Alyssa, is it doesn't sound like we have an agenda item just yet, but we actually have an excellent AI introductory class, which I'm happy to send to you. We have one of our wonderful adult librarians who teaches that AI is a hot topic for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
He can kind of walk through, here is the most recent usage of AI.
Sure.
And might give you a picture of how patrons are asking and then what a class looks like.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Just let me know, I guess, where and when or
Yeah,
whatever.
how about this? Amanda and I will send you the information and you can coordinate. I'm not sure the calendar, but yeah, we can definitely do that.
Okay.
And I can send it to the full board if you don't like.
Let me say, there are some very interesting questions about AI in education now. The RAND Corporation did a huge study that raised major flags for how it's being used in public schools.
Yes.
But I'd be interested in that too. I mean,
Sure.
and the question for me would really be, how we see AI impacting what we do over the next decade.
So
5 years, I don't know.
I can give you a real-time example. Workforce development is one of our strong suits. We have highly trained librarians that can put together resumes, cover letters, and business plans, and things like that. Patrons are now using ChatGPT and saying, design a business plan for blah, blah, blah. But what we are helping patrons understand is that just because AI generates it doesn't mean it's necessarily accurate. So we can't control, and we should not control, how patrons are using AI, the internet, things like that. But we are always will be a resource for credible information. You're right, to help people discern what it is that's appropriate. AI hallucinates, so you can ask for a business plan, and then it'll come up with something that sounds plausible, but it's complete, just nothing. It's nonsense. So I'll happily share the class, and I think that y'all would enjoy that. It looks like we are going to get out 25 minutes early, folks. That is, look at that precious, precious time.